We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Say you don't know me, I recognize my face. Say you don't care who goes to that kind of place. Knee deep in the hoopla, sinking in your fight. Too many runaways, eating up the night. Marconi plays the mambo. Listen to the radio. Don't you remember? We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city.
I will never tell you a lie. And sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, I think my best friend is an idiot. But I'm thinking he might be less of an idiot today. Because this song right here by Starship, you know the song, right? We built this city. Well, on this day in 2011, October the 6th, 2011, Rolling Stone magazine ranked We Built This City by Starship the worst song of the 1980s. And I ask myself, how can that possibly be? Going back to my best friend who, while over enjoying a couple of pops on the deck at some point this past summer, that song came on my playlist. And he commented how terrible a song it was. And I scoffed at him. I said, what are you talking about, terrible? That's an awesome song. And we got into this little bickering match about the quality of said tune. He was dead set against it. I was firmly in favor. But maybe my buddy knew something I didn't know. According to Rolling Stone magazine, Starships, We Built This City, the worst song of the 1980s. This day, October the 6th, back in 2011, Rolling Stone out with that list. If you're curious, there are 4 others. The top 5 worst songs of the 1980s were, starting at number 1 with We Built This City by Starship. It's Monday. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. If you want to take a wild stab at one of the other 4 songs to make Rolling Stone's top 5 worst songs of the entire decade of the 1980s, you are certainly welcome to do so. Drop me an email, mike@570news.com. Or, hey, call in and take your best guess at one of the other 4 songs on Rolling Stone's list of 5 worst songs of the 1980s. We Built This City by Starship in at number 1. I'll give you all 5 before 9:30 this morning, I promise. But we must begin, of course, by talking about those Toronto Blue Jays. And this goes out to my buddy Joe, who is a fairly regular caller to this show. He might email even more than he calls. And about a week ago, at the end of the baseball regular season, Joe was sending me emails telling me how terrible he thought Vlad Guerrero Jr. was and how overpaid he was and what a terrible contract it was that the Blue Jays signed Vladdy to. And I said to Joe, give your head a shake. And I shared with Joe a whole bunch of statistics that showed Vlad Guerrero Jr. in the top 10 offensively across the American League. Top 3 in one category, I believe it was batting average. His defense, I think, is stellar. But Joe insisted, what a terrible contract. What a dumb idea. What an overrated, overpaid player. Hey, Joe, how are you feeling about Vladdy today?
John Schneider talks about the week off being big for Guerrero. 2-1. Vlad launches one, left field and deep. Bellinger going back, looking up at the wall. It's out of here.
Broken bat, diving catch by Vlad Jr. Vlad's put a stamp all over this game through 2 innings. You think Vlad, you think offense, you think home runs, but do you think this? Wow.
Righties 2-1. Swinging a deep drive. Left field. That ball is soaring out of here. A grand slam. Pinch yourself all you want. You will not wake up from this dream right now. The Blue Jays lead 9-0 on a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. grand slam.
And those are just the Vladdy highlights from the weekend. 2 home runs, including the grand slam. A double play. He turned himself at first base. We were at Rogers Center enjoying that game on Saturday, along with 42,000 or so of our best friends. What an atmosphere. What a weekend for the Blue Jays. Vladdy, just to focus on Vladdy, who Joe says is overrated and overpaid. Vladdy had, 6 hits in 9 plate appearances. Is that good? It'd be about a 333 batting average a 667 batting average from where I'm sitting this morning. 6 RBI, 3 runs scored, 2 home runs, including the grand slam. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has come to play in these playoffs, and the Blue Jays are 1 win away from advancing to the American League Championship Series. As Yogi Berra famously said, it ain't over till it's over. But what a start for our Blue Jays and Vlad Guerrero Jr. Our good buddy Preston Paul, Farwell's Force member number 45, on the phone with us this morning. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Mike. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You got to be liking that pitching performance. Always.
Trey, you savage. What a game yesterday.
Oh, I get goosebumps all night long, Mike. I'm telling you.
You betcha.
It was unbelievable. But I tell you, if the bullpen is going to do what they did yesterday, it's a good thing they did it with 12-0 lead.
I don't disagree. I wish Savage could have stayed in a little bit longer, but
Yep. He needs to stay in there. He should have stayed in to put the herd on the Yankees. But now we got him for Game 5 if we need him.
That's right, exactly. And I think there was a plan there that the team knew about, and they were working it, and it's fine. The 7 runs given up by the bullpen, you're not wrong, but we'll take the big win, and we'll take the 2-0 lead, and we'll go to the Bronx and hopefully finish this thing off.
Yeah, all the batter or players on the bench, they came through. It was just so good to see good defensive, high-energy baseball.
Lots of fun to watch.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Paul. Good to hear from you to start the show this Monday morning. You're welcome anytime. Our phone line's open the minute we begin the show. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. We'll do some ranting and or raving between noon and 1 today. It's a Monday tradition on this show with open phone lines. And I would make a personal appeal to you if it's not too much trouble. Entertain me today. I know I'm putting it on you, but I'm going to be away the rest of the week traveling with our Kitchener Rangers. So Larry Fedoruk will be filling in tomorrow through Friday as Josh Piercy and I head out on a long northern road trip with the Kitchener Rangers. So the more fun we have today, the better the memories while I'm away the rest of the week. Speaking of Josh Piercy, he was reporting this morning, and you likely heard during All News Mornings with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas, Josh's story about the Urban Good Funeral Home in Waterloo, right down by King and William. I think you know it well. And there is a proposal in a public meeting later today in Waterloo to build a couple of tall 30-plus story condominium towers where the Urban Good Funeral Home currently sits. This isn't new. It's been in the works for a while, but again, that public meeting later today. Something else to keep in mind, if you know the area that we're talking about here, again on King near William in Waterloo, where Urban Good is, right on that corner of King and William is a retirement home now, which used to be a brewery, right? We have a pretty long history with alcohol production in this community, not just whiskey from Seagram's, but beer. And that was a Labatt brewery when I was a kid, and many of you may remember it as that. But before Labatt, it was the Kuntz Brewery, the local family that had a brewery on that corner before it turned over to Labatt's. So right along with the Urban Good Funeral Home, kind of between the funeral home and the corner where the brewery once stood, which is now the retirement home, there is the Kuntz House, a really beautiful old literally that house on King Street near William, on the edge of Uptown in Waterloo. And there are plans, along with these tower developments being done, to convert possibly the Kunsthaus into a restaurant of some sort. Nothing's really confirmed as far as that goes yet. However, it's an interesting story to see the Urban Good Funeral Home, a longstanding local business, the property being turned over to development for condominium towers, and even more interesting, a level of intrigue around the relocation of Urban Good, which many of you will know is headed for Victoria Street in Kitchener, where a Home Hardware used to be, not far from Victoria and Frederick, where there also used to be a Canadian Tire. There was a Home Hardware along Victoria in that area, closed down. That's where Urban Good is going to be relocating. And when they do that relocation, the Urban Good Funeral Home, a crematorium will also be a part of the services offered. And what's intriguing about that, at least from where I'm sitting, is that new place for Urban Good on Victoria Street in Kitchener. It's not all that far from the Henry Walzer Funeral Home in Kitchener. That's in the Frederick and Edna area. And when the Henry Walzer Funeral Home wanted to add a crematorium to its site, well, the neighborhood kind of lost its collective juices. And there was a whole bunch of pushback. And then here we are, several blocks away, not all that far really, and Urban Good will move into this place on Victoria Street and add a crematorium to its site. And I haven't heard as much of a peep. I think these funeral homes should be able to offer these services. I mean, clearly there is an industry that's always going to have customers because we're all going someday. And it seems more and more of us are opting for cremation upon our passing. So I don't see any reason that these services shouldn't be offered. But I find it interesting. There was quite the uproar when the Henry Walzer Funeral Home wanted to add a crematorium. Several blocks away, Urban Good will move in. Crematorium is part of the site. I haven't heard as much of a peep. Back on the towers piece at Urban Good and the 30-plus story condominium towers that are proposed for that site. It wasn't all that long ago, a few weeks back, that I was kind of joking on the show about how condo crazy we have gone in this region. And like, can I get a single detached home, please? Could I get that? Like, it seems like in this region, like, you're welcome to come here. We're growing to 1 million people, but you get a condo. And then you get a condo, and you get a condo, and you get a condo. Just having some fun with this in the last many weeks. But thanks to a reminder in this morning's Waterloo Region Record, we can certainly put some data behind the joking I was poking at our communities with all of the condominium craziness. At least it seems to me. And I'm going to take you back to 2023. Okay, I know, but work with me here. It's late 2023, so almost 2 years ago, Ford Fest at Bingaman's, right? Ontario Premier Doug Ford in Kitchener at Bingaman's, and he said this.
I got to ask you folks, to some of you, not the younger ones, but old guys like myself, you ever went by those wartime homes that they built years ago? We have them in Etobicoke. Now they're about 1.2 billion. Let me give you a promise. We're going to make sure that we're going to donate land. We're going to work with our municipalities. We're going to offer a 1,600 square foot home with a basement that's finished that you can rent out or have a family there. We're going to have a backyard with a fence. You're going to have a paved driveway under $500,000. You can't find a home under $500,000 anywhere in this province. As sure as I'm standing here, we're going to make that available to young people that are renting right now that have a dream of home ownership.
As sure as the Premier was standing there in Kitchener at Bingaman's about 2 years ago, you are going to have a 1,600 square foot home with a basement for family or that you can rent out, a paved driveway, a backyard, a fence for under $500,000. That was the promise, as sure as the Premier was standing there in Kitchener 2 years ago. How are we doing on our progress towards that promise? Well, I can tell you that in the past 2 years, from 2023 to 2025, there were just over 800 detached homes built in the region of Waterloo. 813, to be exact, detached homes, representing about 10% of the housing starts over the past 2 years. So 90% ain't detached homes with basements, paved driveways, and backyards with fences. Last year, there were only 376 detached homes started in the region of Waterloo. That is the fewest since 1990. That's right, the fewest in 35 years. The next slowest year for starts of detached homes in this region was 1991, when we had almost double what we did last year. 669 detached homes started in this region in 1991. 376 last year, and a total of just over 800 since the Premier promised that we would have 1,600 square foot homes with basements, paved driveways, backyards, and fences for under $500,000. And here we are growing up, 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 and away with the Urban Good Funeral Home to make way for a couple of 30-plus story towers in Waterloo.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
All right, how about a Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning? Number one, the investigation continues into a fatal motorcycle crash in the village of Conestoga. Happened yesterday around 3 on Northfield Drive at Scotchline Road. Regional police say the man and woman on the motorcycle, both in their 50s, were killed in that crash. A 61-year-old driver of a car also involved in the collision was not seriously injured. Police say the driver of a white car in the area may have witnessed the crash, and they'd like that driver to come forward with info. No word yet on any charges. Number two, a road just outside Cambridge remains closed this hour after an overnight crash. Police say multiple young people were sent to hospital after a car crashed into a hydro pole on Clyde Road just after midnight. Anyone with information on the crash is asked to call regional police. Number three, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Prime Minister Mark Carney is headed to Washington today. He's planned meetings with U.S. President Donald Trump tomorrow, where trade and security are expected to be high on the agenda. This as U.S. tariffs are hitting Canadian steel, aluminum, copper, autos, and softwood lumber, despite Carney's pledge to negotiate a deal. Number four, MPs will be pressing for details about the country's fiscal position today, as the federal finance minister is expected to appear at a parliamentary committee. Francois-Philippe Champagne is set to make the appearance about a month before the Liberals are to table their first fiscal update under Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, Carney has promised to balance the operating side of the government's books in 3 years, but capital spending is also expected to rise as there are plans to ramp up defense and infrastructure investments. We'll talk more about that upcoming budget when David Drewe joins us for Drewe's Views this morning at 11:30. And number five, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Israeli and Hamas officials are meeting today in Egypt to discuss a potential ceasefire in Gaza. The negotiations focus on a ceasefire's first stage. That will include the partial withdrawal of Israeli forces and the release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. This push for peace follows Hamas accepting some elements of the U.S. peace plan, which Israel supports. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 6th of October. We continue on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every day when we begin the show at 9, our phone lines open to you. You're always invited to be a part of our conversation. Let's go to the phones now. George is with us. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing today?
Just great, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm doing very well. Mike, I was at that Fourth Fest. We had a great time. It was wonderful. My family really enjoyed it. But, Mike, I don't remember the premier smoking the wacky tobacco to come up with that kind of statement.
Are you telling me, George, that you didn't get your 1,600 square foot detached home with a basement, paved driveway, backyard, and fence for under $500,000 yet?
That amazed me, especially at 1,600. That's a big house.
Sure is.
Say 1,100. You know, your typical 1,200 for house starter with a small family. But $1,600, no way. That's not going to happen.
Well, I don't think it is either. It certainly has not. And yet, as sure as the premier was standing there 2 years ago, he said it was going to happen. Mike is also with us on the phone. Good morning, Mike.
Michael, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good, Mikey. How are you?
Good, long time. Listen.
Yes, sir.
Was that a performance by the kid or what?
Come on, Vlad Guerrero Jr., are you kidding me?
And
Unreal.
Listen, everybody a little worried about Vladdy. Don't worry about him. He's going to heat up right now.
He is hot. You don't cool him down. That's the thing now.
And Yusavich was unbelievable.
Fantastic. 11 strikeouts for the kid.
It was great. Nothing better than beating the Yankees, eh, Mike?
Amen, brother.
And
amen.
Listen, Mikey, it's kind of sad today about Urban Goodfruno home because that's been a long-standing Waterloo place for a lot of years. It's kind of sad to see that there will be no more Waterloo for them. That's kind of sad, Mikey.
Yeah, well, I mean, the business lives on, obviously, just in a new location in Kitchener. But I know what you mean. You get used to things.
Right,
sure.
Mikey, we gotta get it. But, Mikey, go Jays, and the Leafs start Wednesday. Mikey, we're going to be hot, buddy. We're going to be hot. Get her going, Mikey.
I hope so, Mike.
Take care, brother.
All right, thanks for the call. I love a good sports fan on a Monday morning. The Leafs, Wednesday night. You know who they're playing, too, right? They're playing that team that shall not be named. Go Leafs, go is all I will say about that. Go Rangers, go. We've got 3 big games this week, starting Wednesday night in Flint, up to the Sioux on Friday, over to Saginaw on Saturday. We'll be home in time to get some turkey and stuffing in us on Sunday. I started the show today with We Built This City by Starship. That was the song I chose because it was on this day in 2011. Rolling Stone magazine came out with a list of the worst songs of the 1980s. And in what was a surprise to me, We Built This City by Starship was named the worst song of the entire decade of the 1980s. I like that song. So I thought we could have some fun and at least give you the top 5, or should I say the bottom 5 worst songs of the entire decade of the 1980s, according to Rolling Stone magazine when they released this list on this day back in 2011. So let's count them down from number 5. And the 5th worst song of the 1980s was...
We can dance, everybody look at your hands. We can dance, everybody's taking the chance. Save the dance, let's save the dance.
Oh, you poor men without hats. Have you found your hats yet? 40 years later. No? Okay, well, that is Safety Dance, the 5th worst song of the 1980s, according to Rolling Stone magazine. Number 4.
Wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo. Wake me up before you go. I don't want to miss.
I can get behind that one. I never really understood Wham. I really didn't. Wasn't really my thing. That's the 4th worst song of the 80s. 3rd worst, according to Rolling Stone magazine.
Lady.
Oh, poor Chris de Burgh. And I think Kelly LeBrock was in that video, also a star of the 1980s. Where Are They Now? The 2nd worst song of the 1980s, according to Rolling Stone magazine.
It's the final countdown.
I might not be able to play that for the Farwell Show 5 anymore. Europe's Final Countdown, the 2nd worst song of the 1980s, according to Rolling Stone magazine. And as we started the show today, We Built This City by Starship was the worst song of the entire decade, according to Rolling Stone magazine. I'm going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then let's talk about our landfill. How much life is left in it, and can we extend that life? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The region of Waterloo is taking a look at its long-term waste management strategy, and you can help to shape that strategy by participating in an online survey. That survey, though, closes today at engagewr.ca, so if you can carve out 5 to 10 minutes, I know the region would value your feedback, because if it's one thing that seems to concern us all, it's how we handle our waste in this community, from the way it's picked up at our curbside to the way it is managed at our landfill. Tracy Annette is a senior engineer in waste management with the region of Waterloo. Joins us to talk more about it. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Really appreciate you making the time to talk about this issue because, as I said, I know it resonates with everybody. And, you know, I think back many years of covering the news in this community, Tracy, and we talked often about the 30-year life of our landfill and maintaining that. And as time goes on, obviously, that lifespan shortens. Where do things currently stand with the lifespan of our landfill?
Well, that's a great question, Mike. Based on our current forecast and our active filling area, we estimate that we have about 20 years of capacity remaining. So some folks may say, how come the life has been extended? And I can tell you that there's been excellent participation across the community involved in diversion programs that we've rolled out over the years, excellent long-term planning, as well as we continuously improve how we develop and operate our landfill. So that in combination has helped us to extend this important asset for our community.
I think that's one of the other reasons, Tracy, that talking about landfill, our landfill site and how we manage waste resonates with so many because, of course, we pioneered the blue box here in the region of Waterloo and diversion became really a part of our DNA here. Are there things that we can do to extend the life of this landfill beyond the current 20-year estimate? Do we still have room for greater diversion, for example?
Absolutely, Mike. We know based on waste composition studies that we've completed in the past for our residential waste stream and more recently for our business stream that although we have one of the highest provincial diversion rates in the province, we know from those waste audits that there's more that we can and should be doing through more education and perhaps development of additional diversion programs, making sure there's viable receipt to divert particular waste streams. I'm thinking of construction and demolition materials or perhaps food waste reduction and rescue. There's lots of opportunity. And there's a lot of people doing great things locally to promote a circular economy, Mike. There's tool lending libraries. There's an appetite for repair cafes. So people are interested to gain the skills needed to repair items and keep small appliances and bikes and even clothing in the economy to extend the life of those items.
I mentioned at the beginning that there is an online survey at engagewr.ca that folks can participate in as you work on this long-term waste management strategy, Tracy. And I know there's been some public consultation in person up until this point throughout the month of September. What have you learned to date as you explore this new strategy?
Well, thank you, Mike. Yes, we've talked throughout the month of September to over 100 business leaders and technical folks. We've talked to over 200 members of the community through our area municipality in-person events. There is certainly an appetite for the region to revisit the programs that were programs and services for multi-residential buildings and supports that we provide to those owners. We know with the anticipated population growth to surpass 1 million people come 2051 that the bulk of those people will be housed in multi-residential buildings. We know that there's a high percentage of construction and demolition materials, and folks are looking for what can be done to divert those materials We know from our residential waste audits that although our residents are doing an excellent job through using the green bin program and the blue box program, we still have about 50% waste content in the of food and organics that could have been diverted through the green bin program, as well as over 10% recycling content. So lots we can and should be doing.
You mentioned that population growth, and we are anticipating a population of 1 million in this region by 2051. We talk an awful lot about being 1 million ready. So when we sit here in 2025, let's call it 2026 even, and look at a 20-year lifespan for our landfill, how does the increasing population that we're also anticipating put more pressure on that timeline?
Yes, excellent question, Mike. We do have population growth factored into our forecast. However, the draft actions that we've just engaged the community, residents, and businesses in are looking at, what we can and should be doing with our future residual waste solutions, and it as well. I'm sorry, Mike, would you mind repeating the question?
Sure. I'm just looking at when we get to 1 million people, this projection that we have of a 20-year lifespan, how does the increased population impact that?
Oh, yes. We are evaluating equitable services across the region, and just, with our 2 active sites at the Cambridge and Waterloo facility, are our services accessible for our residents? And again, just looking at specific components of the waste stream that could be diverted through a viable program.
What options do we have, Tracy, after 20 years when we have the lifespan of our landfill today has expired? Then what?
Yes. Well, we have always undertaken effective long-term planning, and we have a draft action that we've engaged the community with to look at our residual waste management. So after the great work that has been implemented since the 2013 strategy, our colleagues looked at energy from waste as an example, innovative technology. And so it may be appropriate now, with the time that has lapsed, to revisit that and see if there's a neighboring municipality that would like to partner with the region in order to make that economically viable. So that's just one example. We also completed a jurisdiction scan, and we know that a lot of municipalities internationally have taken that hard stance to be leaders and to move towards net zero waste. And so they've really looked and have promoted effective circular economy focus, where they've created tech hubs and funding to help promote entrepreneurs that are looking to contribute to this circular economy, as well as food waste reduction and rescue. So there's a number of items that, if we're successful in getting council approval to implement, that collectively this may extend the life of our landfill. But we definitely want to have a look at what we should be doing beyond the 20 years.
The last time we talked about waste management on our show, listeners were very interested in the idea of incineration. Is that technology something, is it viable? Is it something we would consider as a waste management strategy in the future?
Well, that technology, Mike, has come a long way. And yes, that's something we would consider, although based on a 2016 study, we know that we just, even with our population growth, Mike, we don't have the tonnage to make it economically viable. So we would need to partner with a neighboring municipality. There is the municipality of Durham that has a very environmentally sound energy from waste facility. I had an opportunity to view that facility earlier this year, and it's very impressive what they're doing with that waste, and they're also creating energy. And so again, as our population grows, we have climate reduction targets, energy reduction targets, and so it's in terms of environmental impacts, there's been a lot of improvements to air quality monitoring and offsets that way.
Tracy, I really appreciate you making time for our show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Mike. And could I just add that we just made the decision this morning to extend the survey this week. We've got a lot of good interest and good participation. So just a little plug to go to our Engage Waterloo Region page to complete that survey.
Oh, thank you for that, because I felt kind of bad just with the last day of the survey. So if it's been extended, that gives our listeners more time to participate. Great to know. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tracy. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Tracy
Annette joins us. Tracy is the project lead and a senior engineer of waste management at the region of Waterloo. The project lead, Tracy, is on the region's long-term waste management strategy. I'm glad. I was going to say I'm sorry for only getting you this conversation, this information today on the last day of the survey, but it's been extended through the week. So still, if you can carve out that 5 to 10 minutes today, do so. You've got a little more time now because of the interest that's been generated so far, sometime this week. But do visit engagewr.ca. Take the short survey. Let the region know your thoughts on this waste management strategy. And of course, like they survey you online at engagewr.ca, we kind of do these informal surveys here on the show when it comes to waste management, the life of our landfill. 20 more years. Now, that does take into account the anticipated population growth. So obviously a good thing, because really 20 years from now, we're going to be awfully close to that 1 million people if we meet those population targets. I'll tell you this about the estimates for the lifespan of our landfill. Just again, referencing the number of years working in news in this community and talking about this very thing. I do remember, and I remember rather well, the time that the anticipated lifespan was 30 years. And I remember revisiting the story and the strategy and the lifespan multiple times, and it stayed at 30 years because we were doing an awfully good job of diversion. So I can promise you, from the first time I started talking about this or covering stories about it, when it was 30 years, that was a whole lot more than 10 years ago. Now we're at a point where we're saying 20 years. But that doesn't mean necessarily that by 2046, let's say, as I erase the final months of this year, it doesn't mean by 2046 we're done. It means here's what the lifespan is if we don't do this, that, or the other thing based on this strategy. Could be 2056, could be 2051, take your pick. Doesn't mean it's a hard and fast date that everything is done. It's a reminder to us that there is a finite life to the landfill, and the greater our efforts with diversion, the longer that landfill can last. What's your take on the way we manage waste in this community? From diversion to curbside pickup to trips you might take to the landfill yourself. How are we doing when it comes to the way that we manage waste? Your thoughts, always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Although our residents are doing an excellent job through using the Green Bin program and the Blue Box program, we still have about 50% waste content in the food and organics that could have been diverted through the Green Bin program, as well as over 10% recycling content. So lots we can and should be doing.
That is Tracy Annette, a senior engineer of waste management with the region of Waterloo, talking about our landfill, which has a projected lifespan today of another 20 years. And that does take into account the anticipated growth in our population to 1 million people by 2051. But the bottom line is the lifespan gets shorter, as you would expect. And we're looking at strategies to not only extend that lifespan beyond the 20-year estimate that we currently have for it, but also to figure out what happens when we have expired the lifespan of our landfill here in the region of Waterloo. And you'll know there are there's a history of this. I can point you to McLennan Park, better known in these here parts in Kitchener as Mount Trashmore, a former landfill that's now a popular park. There's a popular tobogganing hill for the longest time. There's a nice bike park and skate park in there, and people enjoy it. Former Waterloo Mayor Brenda Halloran kind of cut her teeth in local advocacy as she advocated on behalf of homeowners on Rawl Green Crescent in Kitchener, which were impacted by a former landfill. And I can tell you, working out here at the boardwalk, depending on the day and probably the direction of the wind, there is certainly a signature odor from the landfill. And that's me coming to work. There are a lot of houses out in this northwest part of Waterloo as well that are impacted by that. But really what it comes down to, the biggest impact that we're dealing with here and talking about is what happens when there's no life left in this landfill? What then will we do with our waste? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. John is with us on the phone this morning. Farwell's Force member number 67. Good morning, John.
Hi, Mike. Well, I don't have a lot to say on this, and I won't take up too much time because I've got a lot of preparatory work to be done yet before Wednesday's home opener. But I would just ask people to look up a song. I think it was originally written by Delbert McClinton, and I really love a version by Morgan Davis, who played a number of times under the tutelage of Kevin Doyle at the Boathouse. He's played a number of times at the Kitchener Blues Festival. But the song is called Too Much Stuff. And I think as we look around ourselves as a society, we probably have too much stuff, and that's not helping the landfill site. So that's about my feeling on the amount of garbage we create as human beings this morning.
John, appreciate the call, and I don't think you're alone in that sentiment. I mean, how many times have we heard recently about illegal dumping that we see in parts of the community? And we heard Tracy Annette, the senior engineer in waste management from the region of Waterloo, talk about that circular economy, right? Instead of throwing something out, it gets repurposed through a thrift store, through a charity that can, resell it or donate it to somebody that needs. I'm thinking clothing. Tracy mentioned tool libraries where you can go and basically take out a tool or borrow a tool like you would borrow a book from a library, things like that, so that maybe you have no more use for a tool. Instead of it going into the garbage, you are putting it into a tool library so somebody else can make use of it. Maybe you do some of your own repairs of things, from sewing clothes to fixing appliances, whatever. There's a video for everything on YouTube to maybe walk you through the steps of the process. And I hear where you're coming from, John. And, my best buddy that I mentioned at the beginning of the show today, and our debate over the Starship song, We Built This City, I like it, he doesn't. He and I also talk often because he is about as minimalist as they come, lives a very sparse existence. And we talk about the whole consumption of stuff, if you will, frequently. So, as I said, John, don't think you're alone in that sentiment. All right, we're fast approaching an update from the 570 News Center. And then after that, we're going to revisit a discussion we had several weeks ago with a professor from Western University who advocated strongly for the continued use of animals in testing for medical breakthroughs, etc. But we received a lot of feedback on that, and many pointed out there are alternatives to animal testing. So let's explore those as we continue the conversation on the Mike Farwell Show this morning, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Several weeks ago on the show, we spoke with Arthur Brown at Western University. Arthur is the chair of the university's Animal Care Committee, and he vigorously defended the continued use of animals in testing to continue with advancements in medicine. Following that conversation, we received a number of emails by way of feedback saying, there is another side to this story. And of course, there always are multiple sides, are there not? And so we welcome to the show this morning Dr. Charu Chandrasekhara, who's an international expert in animal-free methods and science policy and the founder of the Canadian Centre for Alternatives to Animal Methods. Charu, good morning. Good morning. We know that animals were integral, for example, in the breakthrough of the discovery of insulin. Now, granted, that dates back about a century now, but what have we learned since that time about the need to use animals in medical testing?
Indeed, the animals were part of past discoveries in an era when fancy technologies we have today weren't available. And we have, over the past century, we have learned a lot from animals. Most of the textbook knowledge we have today comes from animal studies, but there's a problem with it because those studies don't really help us with what we need to look at today. Today, in 2025, we're not mapping organs or isolating a hormone. We're looking at human biology in unprecedented detail, looking at single-cell level to see how our DNA functions, how these cells function, and so much more. And the problem is that glorified historical discoveries in animals don't solve today's issues. And one of the things I want to mention is, when you look at, everyone brings up this insulin story. But think about something else, like Alzheimer's disease. It has a 99.6% failure rate. Every single breakthrough from animals that has led to a clinical trial in the past decade has failed. So, Mike, would you really tell someone with Alzheimer's, too bad animal research hasn't given you a cure, but look, we've discovered insulin in dogs. It's just not helpful anymore to be looking at the past discoveries and to not think about the future. When 90% of drugs tested to be safe and effective in animals fail in human clinical trials, change isn't optional.
What alternatives then exist for us to advance medical science?
We have a versatile toolbox brimming with non-animal technologies. And there isn't a single technology. It's a collection of methods that we can use to mix and match and use as we so please, depending on the kind of biological questions we're looking for. So some of these most quoted technologies include like organ on chip. So this is a device the size of a thumb drive where you could plate human cells and look at drug toxicity, for example. So liver on a chip, we have now seen that when you put some drugs, let's say, dozens of drugs that were withdrawn from market, you can now take those drugs, put them through this liver on a chip, and you can see that these human biology-based technologies could have predicted those adverse side effects that were not visible in animal studies. And then there are computer simulations, tissue models, and you could do clinical trials virtually. There are lots of different technologies that we could use. It's almost like new approach methods, as they're called. They're like an orchestra, not one instrument, but a collection working together to unravel the symphony of human biology. Some would let us look at DNA, others would show how our cells behave or organs function, or how the body responds as a whole.
This issue, Charu, really came to light and became a talking point, a conversation, when it was learned about dogs being used in testing at Western University. What can you tell us about the increased use of canines in testing for medical breakthroughs?
This is really interesting because in Canada, if you look at the statistics, there's been a surge, right? 94% increase in the use of dogs since 2020. In 2023, the latest statistics we have, we used over 16,000 dogs, which is nearly double that of the entire European Union and Norway combined. So I really don't know why we are seeing such a surge here in Canada. And it could also very well be attributed to our lax regulations, and there is no sort of policies, guidelines that incentivize people to move away from animal testing.
If the regulations were stricter, would you be more supportive of animal testing?
The thing is that not every animal study labeled as necessary is actually necessary. It's not one of those burning house rescues where you have to save a child or a dog. Medical research isn't an emergency triage. It's a design process. So most of the experiments that we have today, including the experiments that were conducted at St. Joseph's Hospital, could have been done without animals. So we're not going to end all animal testing tomorrow morning. My proposal is that we need to revamp our system, redesign our system, and put things into place so that animal research, until everything is replaceable, animal research must be the last resort, not the first option. The biggest problem right now is that it is still used as the first option, even when alternatives do exist.
So how do you get to that regulatory framework that you are hoping for? We've heard Ontario Premier Doug Ford say this has to stop. Is that the step forward that you need?
I think it's one of the steps forward. It's interesting that we have a lot of different things to change, and we also ought to look at what other countries are doing as well. So with Premier Ford, I think there are mixed views on that, but my view is that it's responsible leadership where Canada's oversight system has failed. I think this will give everyone a chance to really look at what they're doing and figure out a way to phase them out. And other countries are doing this already. The U.S. National Institutes of Health, the world's largest biomedical research funding agency, they have come up with new policies and guidelines to prioritize human biology. The FDA is phasing out animal testing for drug safety. And here in Canada, we banned cosmetic animal testing. We have developed a strategic roadmap to phase out the use of animals for chemical safety testing that's guided by federal legislation. So similarly, for biomedical research, which has largely been an unregulated enterprise, we can do the same thing. We really need to make a concerted effort. And in Canada, honestly, we are lagging behind so many other countries. We don't even have federal law governing animals in science, like in the U.S. and the EU. Oversight is left to a nonprofit agency that's funded partly by the institutions it oversees. There's no legal authority to punish violators. In Ontario, you could still buy a dog or a cat from a pound for less than the price of a caramel macchiato. And egregious animal experiments are hidden behind grants with exaggerated claims of societal benefit. We need to do better than this if we really want to find cures for people who have been waiting for decades for safe and effective treatments.
Is there any room for testing on any animal left in the medical community?
What do you mean?
Are we talking here about the elimination entirely of testing on animals, or is there some room still for animal testing on any animal? Dogs, rats, cats, you name it.
So they need to be phased out over time for all animals. And most of these, when I talk about, the federal legislation that we all have for chemical safety testing, that is all vertebrate animals, not just limited to one or two species. We could start with one or two species, right? In the United States, they phased out the use of chimpanzees and moving down to other species. There is space to phase out all of them. It's not your favorite. You're not favoring like one species over another. There's a place for every species. They've played their role. In my opinion, now it's time to really start phasing them out. The reality is that we know more about mouse biology and dog biology than we do our own biology. And so over time, a system has to be put in place to phase out everything. And we don't have to wait for this one magical technology that's going to help us replace them all. It's really about thinking about those questions, the scientific questions, differently, and employing every possible approach that we have at our disposal today and making plans to phase them out. And this is this is happening on a global scale for chemical safety testing, but for biomedical research, the kind of research that you do to understand the fundamental basis of biological processes, that's been a difficult one because a lot of people just set up a hypothesis, apply for funding and get funding and do whatever they want with animals. But those things can also be phased out.
Charu, we appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Dr.
Charu Chandrasekhara is an international expert in animal-free methods and science policy and the founder of the Canadian Centre for Alternatives to Animal Methods. Several weeks ago, we had on the chair of Western University's Animal Care Committee, Arthur Brown, and he advocated for the continued use of animals in testing. He defended the use of dogs in some recent experiments at St. Joseph's Hospital in London, Ontario, where it was the scene of some protest. It's what prompted Ontario Premier Doug Ford to say we have to end this practice. There shouldn't be any testing on animals. And so it brings us to the conversation again today. Having heard from Dr. Brown earlier, we now hear today from Dr. Chandrasekhara as to the alternatives that exist to canine, feline, you name it, testing has to be phased out. And one of the things that caught my ear in that conversation was the idea that this is not, this kind of testing is not emergency testing. One of the arguments used in favor of animal testing is if you were running into a burning house and inside that burning house there was a child and a family pet, who are you going to save first? And the answer inevitably is the child, and the family pet would be sacrificed, so to speak, because the child takes priority. So in that, if you carry on that line of thinking, the animal gets sacrificed in the testing to protect the human child or the human adult in some cases as well. But as much as we look back on that breakthrough, and it will still be argued as one of the greatest medical breakthroughs of all time, that discovery of insulin, and it was animal testing that got us there, but that was a century ago. We have learned an awful lot in the time since. And you know me, if you've listened to this show for more than a minute, you know how much I love my dogs. Cats and I have a different relationship. That notwithstanding, I love me some puppies, and I can't wrap my head around. Honestly, I couldn't. A dog being used in testing, no matter the breakthrough. But listen, we talk about this in the Farwell household all the time. We want to adopt all the dogs. We want to rescue all of the dogs and help all of the dogs. There are too many dogs for us to rescue, and clearly, given the number of dogs and cats and others in shelters, there are too many there for us to rescue as well. So do they serve a higher purpose by being used in medical testing? Or do we phase out the use of animals in medical testing? It is a conversation that has come to a head in recent months, given those tests being done at St. Joseph's Hospital and the protests around them. How do you feel about it? Should we phase out the use of animals in medical testing? Let me know your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
It's really about thinking about the scientific questions differently. And this is happening on a global scale for chemical safety testing. But for biomedical research, the kind of research that you do to understand the fundamental basis of biological processes, that's been a difficult one because a lot of people just set up a hypothesis, apply for funding and get funding and do whatever they want with animals. But those things can also be phased out.
Dr. Charu Chandrasekhara says, unlike the United States, where there is a Laboratory Animal Welfare Act, or the European Union, which has its own directive governing research animals. Canada has never passed a federal law. And I suspect that's one of the reasons that Dr. Chandrasekhara has founded the Canadian Centre for Alternatives to Animal Methods, saying, listen, we can't rest on our laurels, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase when talking about animals being used in medical testing. But we can't rest on those laurels from a century ago when animal testing was critical in the discovery of insulin. We have advanced in so many ways in the 100 years since, and we have ample alternative to animal testing today. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has said we have to end this practice. No, we're not going to have testing on dogs and cats and people's pets, and that's the end of that. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. I find this an incredibly difficult conversation. As somebody who, as I said before the break, is a lover of animals generally, dogs specifically, it breaks my heart to think about a dog being under any kind of undue stress in the interests of advancing medical science. That being said, the cold, hard calculation in all of this, and I have said it many times in the past, it's good to be at the top of the food chain, isn't it? And that's just the reality of all of this. Certainly, we get to a certain point where there are clinical trials for humans, but that's well down the line. And if you went to a post-secondary institution where those options were available, you may remember this, that you could participate in studies at schools. I remember seeing the advertisements in, oh my gosh, what was our UW newspaper back in the day? Goodness gracious, I can't believe I'm forgetting it. Anyway, but the advertisements would be in there saying, here's your $25 to participate in this study, that study, or the other thing. And when you're a student and you're eating Chef Boyardee every day, a few extra bucks certainly doesn't hurt. But by the time we get to human trials, we are well down the road of advancing that particular medical breakthrough. So I just don't know. We also know that there are so many animals in shelters, too many animals in shelters than homes for them to be housed in. There aren't enough families for all of the animals that exist. So it's tough. But as an animal lover, it does make it difficult for me to think about an animal being used in medical testing, knowing that the animal could be suffering throughout the process of that test. Dylan is on the phone with us. Morning, Dylan.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, perfect world, we would never have to test on animals. It's not a perfect world. I would hate to miss out on an advancement because we didn't have something to test on. I do think it should be a last resort, obviously, and to ensure that it's a last resort, there should be a fee paid by these agencies doing the testing that goes to a SPSA or similar, some sort of animal welfare group. That way, it's benefiting the animals and it's still benefiting humans, furthering our scientific discoveries.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I appreciate it. And one of the other concerns, as raised by Dr. Chandrasekhara, our guest, is that essentially the oversight body is governing itself, right? It's the labs that are doing the testing that operate the oversight body, and that clearly appears to be some sort of conflict of interest. Maybe there is some sort of middle ground here. I don't mind the direction that Dylan is moving in, and some stricter regulation is probably required at this point. We've got an update on the way from the 570 News Centre, and then Food Bank Canada's poverty report card impacts Waterloo Region how? We'll talk about it coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Today, October the 6th, just so happens to be the first Monday of the month of October. And on the first Monday of every month at 10:30, we check in with our friends at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. Kim Wilhelm is the CEO there and joins us in studio for these monthly conversations. Always good to see you, Kim. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for getting me out of the office briefly to come here and enjoy that beautiful weather briefly.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Love these in-studio guests, so it's great to have you here. A number of things we're going to get into today. One is the impact of the Canada Post strike, which I know is having an impact on charities. But when you were here last month, Kim, we talked about Hunger Action Month. And one of the things we didn't get into more deeply was Food Bank Canada's poverty report card. So let's start with that and the report itself. What is it telling us? What does it show?
Yeah, so every year Food Banks Canada does put out a poverty report card, and this provides a snapshot of food insecurity right across the country. The report shows how many people are struggling to put food on the table. It highlights trends over time, and it identifies groups in our communities that are most affected. The report focused on the federal government's efforts to reduce food insecurity, and it graded key areas such as poverty levels, living standards, and government actions. And overall, Canada received a D- grade in this report. I acknowledge that in some areas there seems to be signs of progress. The report does make it clear that poverty and food insecurity truly do remain at unacceptable levels. In March, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, in March 2024, Canada saw more than 2 million visits to a food bank in just 1 month. And that trend is expected to continue and rise, actually, just because of the increased cost of living.
So a D- nationally. How does Waterloo Region stack up compared to the national outlook?
Here in Waterloo Region, we are experiencing many of the same challenges that are seen across the country. Thousands of people are relying on food assistance every month. In fact, in August, our community food assistance network, saw a record-breaking month of people accessing food assistance. And what that means is more than 26,000 people right here in our community, which is a 7% increase over last August, accessed a food hamper program. Altogether, more than 53,000 visits. So that's right here in Waterloo Region. We also saw a 9% increase in the number of children living in food insecure households. And that's a concerning number, especially at any time of the year. But we've been talking so much over the summer months about children accessing food banks during our Full Bellies, Happy Hearts campaign.
Okay, we talked last week on the news, Kim, about an increase to the minimum wage here in Ontario. Does that move the needle at all? Is that helping people who are food insecure?
For a full-time worker earning minimum wage, this recent increase is about $800 per year. It's a step in the right direction, but it's still not enough, Mike. When we look at the Ontario Living Wage Network, the 2024 living wage for Waterloo Region is $21.30 an hour. So that means that there's a gap of $3.70 between minimum wage and a living wage. Food insecurity doesn't exist in isolation, neither does poverty. Hunger and low-income work is very closely connected, and many people are living in poverty, are in food-secure households. So, yes, it is a step in the right direction, but it's just not enough.
Yeah, and you talk about that gap, and sadly, really, what ends up happening is food becomes almost one of those disposable parts of our income, right? You got to pay the rent. You got to pay the heat and hydro and keep the water on, et cetera. And food is where household budgets really start getting squeezed.
Exactly. Those items that you mentioned, they're typically coming out of our bank accounts automatically. And so we don't even consider it. But we do have some choice when we go to the grocery store. And so that's where people are making those difficult choices about whether they eat or whether they're paying a car bill that's going to get them to and from a job, whether they eat or turn their heat on in their house as the weather gets colder. And Mike, these are impossible choices that no one should have to make.
You and I were chatting off the air just before we started this, when we were listening about the keg tapping and coming up on Friday. It's Oktoberfest time. I know that's a very busy time for the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. And of course, with Oktoberfest, we're coming into the Thanksgiving weekend, and lots of people think then, Kim, about how they can support our food bank. So as we head into this season of giving, what ways, how can people support the work you do at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region?
Well, if you are out at the grocery store and you have room in your budget, please consider picking up a non-perishable food item for the food bank. You can drop it in at the bin on your way out of the store, or even better, bring donations to the Thanksgiving Parade on October 13th, where we'll have volunteers collecting food and funds along the parade route. If you have room in your budget and you can make a financial donation, the quickest way is online at thefoodbank.ca/Thanksgiving. With the Canada Post strike right now, we're not getting donations in by the mail, so those donations are really critical to be made online. You can also call us at the Food Bank, 519-743-5576, or come for a visit. And while you're there, we would love to give you a tour of our facilities at 50 Alpine Court.
That Canada Post strike that you make reference to, Kim, I mean, it's the second time in a year. It was Christmas last year. Here we are in the Thanksgiving season. There are fall fundraising drives clear across the land. What kind of impact does that have on your ability to reach potential donors?
So in the last year, 50% of our donations were made through the mail, and that accounted for 60% of our annual revenue. So this Canada Post strike is significant. There's also, we rely on mail going out at this time of year to our donors, asking for them to support. And while some people may choose to make a donation online, they're prompted because of that mail that they get at their mailbox. And so we're really concerned about what this means. Second year, as you mentioned. And that's why I said, even last week, I already started to see a pickup in people coming and dropping off their donations. So we're so thankful to our neighbors for continuing to keep us top of mind during this time.
All right. Online, I'll remind you again, thefoodbank.ca/Thanksgiving. And can you share that phone number with us again, Kim, please?
519-743-5576.
743-5576. It's a 519 number, 743-5576. Or online, thefoodbank.ca/Thanksgiving. It is a time of need. We'll be at the parade with the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. The volunteers will be out collecting donations along the parade route as well. Before I let you go, Kim, we know there is a need. We've talked about the D- from Food Banks Canada in that poverty report. We've talked about the impact that we're seeing here in the region through your work at the Food Bank. What is it, though, that gives you hope when you look at the way this community responds to hunger?
Well, I think you just said it right there. It's because of the way the community responds to hunger that gives me hope. Whether it's an individual donating food or funds, local businesses coming together, volunteers giving their time, our community is like no other. And I say that proudly because Waterloo Region is a special place. And it reminds me that even in challenging times, we can make a real difference for everyone in our community.
You talk about challenging times. I can't help but think of, the pivots, whatever we want to talk about, or however we want to describe them now. I'm thinking back to pivots during the pandemic, of course, but here you are pivoting, trying to find ways to reach people when the Canada Post strike has such a significant impact on your operations.
It's true. It feels like for the last 5 years, all we've done is pivot. And I know there was a time where we said we would never use that word again, but it's a reality. We've changed as our world has changed since 2020, and some things for the good, some things not so good. But I think that we realize that we're resilient and that we can come through tough times. It's not always easy, but Waterloo Region, I think, does it better than anyone else.
Food Bank of Waterloo Region is a key part of that. Really appreciate these regular conversations, Kim. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. Joins us on the first Monday of every month at 10:30 to talk about food security or insecurity in our community. And, you know, there's a small group that for the third year is getting behind the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, and they come at their annual fundraiser from a very good and meaningful place. You'll hear from them coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, we just heard from the Food Bank of Waterloo Region about the increasing need for food donations and support in our community. So how timely is it that the Food Bank fellas are back? Two fellas that once used the Food Bank want to give back. But wait, it's the Food Bank fellas with a twist as we enter the third year of this annual fundraiser. Very pleased to be joined by my good friends Ryan Hammer and Pete Butler. Ryan, good morning.
How's it going, Mikey?
Great. Thank you, my friend. How are you?
Living the dream, pal.
Good,
One
good.
day of hockey every day.
How's the boy doing?
Hey, he's leading the team in rookie points right now, so there's a start.
I love it. I love it. Can't wait to be calling that Hammer name when he makes it to the OHL. Can't wait. And Buttes, you beauty. Peter, good morning to you.
How's everybody doing this fine Monday morning?
We're doing just great, my friend. Thank you for being here. Along with the Food Bank fellas, who you may remember from their past appearances on this show, Melissa Henderson joins us as well, who has joined this fundraiser this year. Melissa, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Now, I'm going to start with you, Melissa. How did these muckety mucks drag you into this? I'd like to know that background story, please.
Well, there's not much to tell. They're really great guys. They were even going to change the name for me, but I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm totally okay.
Okay, so you're officially a Food Bank fella.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly. I've partnered with them this year.
Excellent. So it's Ryan, Peter, and Melissa, the Food Bank fellas. Ryan, let me swing it back over to you. Can you tell us how this all got started and why?
I love this story because it's so fun. It's because it involves you, Mikey.
Me? What did I do?
You'll hear in just a sec.
Okay.
So Pete and I were in the backyard, doing our thing, watching the boys in blue play, and we always have so much critique of the Kitchener Rangers coaches, as you know, because you've kicked me off the show a few times. But we decided it might be a good idea as we were talking to kind of get back to the community because we're in a place to do it. And it started off as a friendly competition. Pete, I'm going to beat you. Ryan, I'm going to beat you. Okay, let's get after it. And the idea was whoever raised the most money, and we didn't clear this with you yet, Mike, but the idea who won the most money would actually get to call a Rangers game right beside the one and only Mike Farwell. Now, you didn't agree to this yet, but we had assumed you're just going to say yes, and that's kind of how it all started.
Pete, tell me the truth. How many wobbly pops were involved before this plan was hatched?
Well, that should say it all, right there. There was a few, especially the fact that we just assumed that you would allow us on your show with that 70-second delay.
Exactly. We would take the usual 7-second delay and extend it considerably for the Food Bank fellas. So we're now coming into year 3, Pete. What can you tell us about the first 2 years and what you've been able to accomplish through this campaign?
So the first 2 years, I believe we hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 16,000 meals per year. And I believe this year we are looking to double that. That's why we brought on some extra help, the big guns, Melissa. Let's see how we can do this.
Ryan, anything to add to the last 2 years and what you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, and Pete hit the nail on the head. We recruited some amazing help through Melissa. Great cornerstone to our community, in our opinion. We set the goal on the food bank page at 15,000 meals for now. Now we've had some recent donations that have not hit yet that'll catapult us almost to the top, if not at the top. They just got to come through. So the last 2 years were a big learning kind of curve for Pete and I, navigating, leveraging some of the community, leveraging some of our partners that we do through work, kind of get ahead of that curve, which gives us a big jump which in turn motivates us to even exceed doubling what we've done for the past 2 years. So again, ultimately, we want to hit 30,000 meals, which would basically make a pretty good dent in the hunger in our community.
And 30,000 meals, if I'm not mistaken, the way the math works at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region would be $15,000 because they get 2 meals per buck, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
$2 or $1 buys you 2 meals.
Okay. Melissa, you mentioned earlier, and I can't disagree. These two guys here, Ryan and Pete, couple of stone cold beauties. We love them. But beyond that, why did you decide to get involved and become a food bank fella yourself this year?
Well, Ryan and Pete actually live in the same neighborhood that I live in, so I think that's why they approached me, I assume. And I do see a need in our specific neighborhood as well. So I think it's very, very important in this region to be able to help and bring out to the community. So they're just really good guys, and they're very, very persuasive.
I was thinking that same word, because even though they haven't called a full period or a full hockey game with me, they have been on the air with me at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. I've got my very own Food Bank Fellas hat that I proudly wear around town. Ryan, I know
Very
also,
nice.
yeah, it's terrific. And Ryan, I know also this comes from a pretty personal place, the idea behind this that got you and Pete really started down this road.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Pete. You know, we actually use the food bank as children due to economic circumstances. And we recently, it wasn't recently, about 2 years ago, we as a community wanted to bring our neighborhood close together. And we hosted Rock the Park in a local park in our neighborhood. And we obviously used food bank as a mode for charity. So bring a non-perishable or donate online here or whatever it might be. And we came to the conclusion, we saw some pretty eye-opening things. Our dear friends were working the grill, and Pete and I and his wife were shaking hands and kissing babies kind of thing. But what we did notice is that some kids would come up for thirds, fourths, or even fifths. And that kind of scared us in our own community. We even had kids come up to ask if they could bring food home to their parents who couldn't make it out. So in our own backyard, there's food insecurity. That is a big part of what we do. Food is something that we need to do to live. We need food. We don't need Netflix. We don't need Google. We need food. And if we can take that one monthly bill out over the course of the holidays, maybe some kids will be privy to some presents, or maybe a rent payment will be paid, one or the other.
I think it's a great example, Ryan. And in our conversations with the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, we have learned that given the increasing food insecurity, it's now 1 in 8 households. So in your neighborhood today, walk down the street, count 8 houses, and chances are one of those 8 is in need of some sort of food assistance. So, Pete, the third annual Food Bank Fellas campaign is underway. How can people support you?
They can go to the link. We could leave you with the link if you can post it on your socials. Ryan, you set it up. Sorry to pass this on. I don't have it set up as of yet, but Ryan.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer. So all of the donations go directly to the food bank. It doesn't come to us in any way, shape, or form. We wanted to keep it nice and clean. And the food bank is amazing. They set us up with our own page. They gave us our own link. And basically, we post that link on socials. And Mike, leveraging you, of course, you're a good guy, cornerstone in our community as well. People tend to listen to you more than knuckleheads like Pete and I. So if you could share that link, as well as having some of your colleagues share the link. And hey, if you want to donate yourself, we would greatly appreciate it. As it stands right now, we have $153.75 donated. That is going to jump very soon. But that is largely how you do it. Just go to the link, kindly contribute, make sure it's the Food Bank Fellows. We want to beat all the local corporations.
Okay. I'm taking a picture live on the air right now. I'm very exciting for our listeners, but of our Zoom call here, I will post this on Instagram with the link at Farwell_WR. That's also X, where I will post the link at Farwell_WR. And you are going to find it on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. Those links will be up in mere minutes because we want to do everything we can to support Ryan and Pete and Melissa, the latest entry to the Food Bank Fellas with their third annual campaign. We're going to raise $15,000 and 30,000 meals starting right now. Ryan, Pete, Melissa, thank you very much for joining the show today, and I wish you the greatest success in your annual campaign. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
We really appreciate it.
Appreciate
And I
you
just
all
sent
right
you the link,
back.
pal.
Thanks.
Just sent you the link.
Thank you very
All right.
much. We'll see you soon. Keep up the great work. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
When are you gonna come down? When are you going to land? I should have stayed on the phone. I should have listened to my own mind. You know you can't hold me forever. I didn't sign up for you. I'm not a present for your friends to open. This boy's too young to be singing the blues. So goodbye, yellow brick road, where the dogs are.
It is Monday morning, and on Monday mornings at 11 a.m., we are joined by our good friend and musicologist, Brian Allison, for This Week in Music History. Don't forget, there is a Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, where you'll get even more tidbits like we are about to discuss on the show this morning. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Before we get into This Week in Music History and look at so many stories from our past, this was just shared with me moments before the 11 a.m. news that we just listened to with Matt Hutchison. Are you ready for it, Brian Allison? Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson say they are planning to reunite as Rush for a North American tour next year.
Yeah, I've been hearing rumblings about this for a couple of months now. There's been a little bit of a buzz, and, the fan reaction has been kind of mixed because there are Rush fans who are saying, yes, please, I want to see them out again on the road and doing stuff. But then there's another segment of the fans that are saying, yeah, but you know what? There's no Neil Peart, so it's not Rush, so why are you doing this? I sit on the fence a little bit about it. I mean, these are two guys who have made their lives in rock and roll, and I'm sure they want to continue to do that, entertain their fans. And, if you want to get a substitute drummer, go ahead and do that. But, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And the big question is going to be, of course, who's going to play drums and fill those shoes?
Nobody capable of filling the shoes, in my opinion. And I feel the same, Brian. I'm mixed. Like, as excited as I am and as likely as I am to go see the show, is it really Rush? I don't know. It's 2/3 of Rush, I guess.
Well, I mean, again, you've got the big portion of Neil Peart who wrote all the lyrics too. So that's taken out a big segment. And again, what drummer is going to audition to fill those shoes?
No kidding.
The pressure of doing that is just, there's nobody that played drums like Neil Peart. So I don't know how you would even approach thinking about wanting to do that gig.
For sure. Okay.
Pretty awesome, though.
It is. I mean, as a Rush fan, it does excite me a little bit. I love me some Geddy Lee. He's done at the baseball game this weekend, watching the Blue Jays win. Now he's ready to reunite with Alex on a North American tour. Looking at This Week in History, let's go back only 5 years, but from the greatest drummer in Neil Peart with Rush to one of the greatest guitarists that we knew, and we lost him 5 years ago today.
It's hard to believe it's been 5 years, but yeah, October 6th, 2020, I think everybody was a little shocked and certainly saddened to hear the passing of Eddie Van Halen, who died at the age of 65. He had a number of years of health issues, starting with the battle with throat cancer and some other health-related issues that seemed to catch up to him. But yeah, Eddie was just a one-off. There was nobody like him. He literally invented the way that the electric guitar was played through the late 70s and 80s. That sound the techniques that he was using that everybody was copying. I mean, those were all his. They'd never been done before, and he sort of started that whole rapid-fire, two-handed arpeggios and finger-tapping harmonics, which were all fashionable in the 80s. Eddie started that, and it was just, an incredible loss to music to see Eddie Van Halen die at age 65. Van Halen sold 80 million albums worldwide. They're Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. You didn't get much bigger than them at some point. So, yeah, we're certainly sad that Ed's no longer around to impress us with his guitar talent.
A couple of massive albums make notes on This Week in Music History. Let's start this week in 1988 and what Dark Side of the Moon accomplished.
Well, what it accomplished is actually finally dropping off the charts. So, and that's an incredible, incredible record because the album was released in 1973. It took 14 years for it to drop off the top 200 albums. 14 years it was within the top 200 albums selling, 741 weeks straight. That is an unbelievable thing to happen to a record, and it sold over 50 million copies worldwide in the last over 50 years now. So it's arguably one of the greatest albums ever made. I ask, is it possible in our world of music today, of downloads and electronic music that we listen to through our phones, will that ever be achieved again? Can a record ever outperform 741 weeks straight on the charts?
Downloads, music on our phones, etc. You left out one thing: attention span. Not a chance. I mean, we are on to the next thing in a hot minute these days.
That's a very good point, too, because attention span has definitely changed, even when it comes to listening music habits. People don't put on an LP and listen to it front to back like they used to. That was something that we did certainly in the 60s and the 70s and maybe into the 80s. But by the time, even CDs came along, people were shuffling, people were listening to songs a lot quicker. And yes, I think you're right. That maybe time has come and gone and we won't see it again, unfortunately.
On This Week in 1995, Brian, a massive Canadian album.
Wow, yeah. So Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morissette went to number one in the U.S. This was her third record. Alanis had been around a little bit as she was more kind of a pop star diva prior to Jagged Little Pill. More sort of a Madonna-esque performer, dancing and dance music and whatnot. And then she did a complete 180, went in the other direction with the sound of Jagged Little Pill. And this was just a massive album. I mean, you didn't get much bigger than this in the 1990s. It sold 33 million copies worldwide, and at the time was the biggest selling album ever by a female artist. So that was pretty impressive. Then a couple of years later, another Canadian artist came along and broke Alanis's record. 3 guesses who that might be, and the first 2 don't count.
Another Canadian artist breaking Alanis Morissette's record. Female or just...
Female artist in the 90s sold more records than Alanis. I mean, come on.
Celine Dion?
No, that's what I would have guessed too, but it wasn't. It was actually the other one. Who's the third great Canadian female artist of the 90s?
Alanis Morissette, Celine Dion, and...
Give you a hint, country.
Well, that's what I was thinking of, but hang on a second. Oh, of course. Oh, my gosh. Okay. I shouldn't have needed that hint. Shania, naturally.
Shania. It was Shania with Come On Over. So
those boots were made for walking, Brian.
It outsold Jagged Little Pill, which nobody ever thought was going to do. But, Shania came along and just broke it by a little bit. I think she ended up selling 35 million copies of her record. So, but it was still a pretty impressive record for Alanis. And, I mean, obviously, Jagged Little Pill those are still all of the songs that she's best known for.
Man, you throw Rita McNeil up there maybe, or Anne Murray, and we've got ourselves a Mount Rushmore of Canadian songstresses.
Well, we truly did. In the 90s, Canada literally had the 3 best-selling female artists on the planet. We had Alanis, we had Shania Twain, and we had Celine Dion, all different genres and all top of their game. So that was pretty cool.
Very cool. All right, let's go back to the decade where my musical tastes still reside. I say it all the time. I'm a child of the 70s, and I love me some 70s rock. And we started our segment today, Brian, with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. This week in 1973.
You and me both, kids of the 70s. This is, the music that was, first heard by our ears, probably thanks mostly to our parents, and AM radio, which, was very, very popular in the 70s. So, yeah, October 5th, 1973, Elton John released what was his seventh studio album at the time, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And incredible body of work there. It was recorded under the two working titles, actually. The first one that they were going to call the album was Vodka and Tonics, which I thought was kind of cool. And then the second title was going to be called Silent Movies, Talking Pictures. But they elected to go with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road based on a song lyric that Bernie Taupin had come up with. And this was an incredibly prolific time of both of their lives. Bernie Taupin wrote the lyrics to the album in 2.5 weeks and gave the lyrics to Elton, who composed the music for most of the album in like 3 and 4 days. So this is a situation where he's coming in with 2 or 3 new songs every day to the studio, and they're recording Candle in the Wind. They're recording Benny and the Jets, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and the title track, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. An incredibly prolific time for them. And, of course, the album was successful, but sold 30 million copies worldwide. Still his best-selling studio album of all time, and was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2003. So pretty cool that that record's been around for over 50 years and still popular.
No kidding. And you talk prolific. That is just an incredible story of how quickly it came together, yet how high quality the music was.
And not without some of the usual trappings of the rock and roll lifestyle, because this is the early 70s. This was the time that Elton, sort of was diving into his very well-documented decades-long love affair with cocaine and alcohol. So that certainly figured into the writing and recording of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and maybe to how prolific they were during that time of writing these incredible songs, literally in hours. I mean, that's just an amazing thing to me.
This story will come full circle, the Elton John and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album story, as we continue this week in music history this week with Brian Allison, who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for a little trip down a musical memory lane. Don't forget, there's a Facebook page of the same name. This week in music history, you'll get these tidbits and more. So we'll bring you the full circle Goodbye Yellow Brick Road story. Also, some news on the Stones and the first number one for an artist incredibly well known on This Week in 1970. All of that still to come with Brian Allison and This Week in Music History on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Monday morning at 11, we're joined by Brian Allison, good friend of the show and musicologist, for This Week in Music History. And it wouldn't be complete, I don't think, Brian, a look back at This Week in Music History without going to 1981 and a tour by the Stones with Prince as a supporting act?
Yeah, it did happen. So the Stones went out on tour in 81 and decided that they were going to take on this young artist from Minneapolis, Prince, who went by the name of Prince, and he was going to be their opening act. And it didn't go incredibly well for Prince. So there was a couple of dates that they played, 2 nights at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum in California. Prince, took the stage dressed in his usual bikini briefs and a trench coat. And after about 15 minutes, the crowd of Stones fans had had enough. They were booing and throwing beer cans at Prince, and he left the stage and did not return. So wasn't an easy road to stardom for Prince. It was, I'm thinking maybe a bad pairing. I don't know that Rolling Stones fans in 1988 would be, looking for a very young, androgynous type of guy wearing eyeliner and bikini briefs and a long purple jacket. In terms of entertainment, maybe one of those pairings that, in hindsight, if it had waited a few years when Prince had been a bit more established, I think it would have been a great show. But fans weren't ready for Prince in 1981. At least Rolling Stones fans weren't.
There you go. And to everything, there is a season, and time eventually, I think, caught up with Prince. We absolutely would have embraced it a decade or so later, no question.
Well, and you know what? You have to give credit to the Rolling Stones for seeing,
sure,
what this artist was capable of, and maybe thinking, yeah, this guy's going to be good someday. We're going to give him a shot. Fans weren't so responsive to it, at least in California, but it was good for the Stones for seeing the value in what would become one of the greatest artists of the 80s and 90s.
This next artist, as we look back to this week in 1970, showed up on our All Request Friday last week, Blue Songs with Song Sung Blue. Forever in Blue Jeans, another big hit. I think most people probably know him for Sweet Caroline, but it was on This Week in 1970 that Neil Diamond scored his first number one, and it was none of those songs.
Well, his first number one as a recording artist. So Neil had been very, very prolific in terms of being a songwriter, and he had recorded even some number one hits before he was Neil Diamond as a performer. But he decided to go out on his own in the late 60s, early 70s. He recorded an album, and Cracklin' Rosie went number one on October 10th, 1970. That was his first number one hit as a solo artist. But he had been recording songs with the Brill Building, which was a famous hot spot for music back in the 60s and 70s, and he had some number one hits before that. He had a very big number one hit with a band in 1966. Any guesses who that might have been?
I'll go with the Trogs. I have no idea.
It was actually the Monkees.
Oh.
The song "I'm a Believer" was a Neil Diamond composition. He wrote that song and gave it to the Monkees, and they recorded it in '66 and took it to number one. So he had already had chart success, just not with his own name behind it.
Interesting. Okay, and so we spent some time talking about the prolific Elton John and Bernie Taupin. What a musical duo, songwriter and composer from music history, and the release of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road this week in 1973. And I guess it comes full circle, Brian, this week in 1997.
It sure does, and what an inspiring story this is. So you think about the success in 1973 of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. What a fantastic album we talked about. And Candle in the Wind, a song dedicated to Marilyn Monroe's memory, was one of the biggest hits on that record. So we fast forward to 1997, and of course we have the tragic passing of Princess Diana, the Princess of Wales. And Elton went back into the studio and re-recorded Candle in the Wind, titling it Candle in the Wind 97, with lyrics more leaning towards the tragic passing of Princess Diana. Released that single, and it went on to become the best-selling single, not only that year, not only in the decade, but ever. It is the best-selling single of all time. It sold 33 million copies as a song worldwide, which is just an incredible, backup story to Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, that Elton was able to rewrite one of those songs and take it to the top of the charts globally, all of those decades later. Impressive, very, very impressive record.
No question. All right, before I let you go, and quickly, this coming Thursday could have been John Lennon's 85th birthday.
Unbelievable. When I think about John at 85, I almost have trouble picturing him. Some artists, you can only picture them sort of in their prime, or maybe what they looked like at the time of their death. But I have trouble thinking about John turning 85 years old. But October 9th, he was born October 9th, 1940. So he would turn 85 years old this week, had it not been for his obviously tragic assassination in 1980. One of the saddest days in music history, for sure. Lots of other rock stars share John Lennon's birthday. A couple of them, John Entwistle, who we've also lost from The Who, was born in 1944 on October 9th. Jackson Browne, still around, was born on October 9th, 1948. And of course, some people don't know this, but Sean Lennon, who is John Lennon's son, was born on John's birthday in 1974. So pretty cool.
Very, very cool indeed. As is this weekly trip down musical memory lane with you, sir. Thanks as always, Brian, for being here.
Always a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks after Thanksgiving.
That's right. You get Thanksgiving off for good behavior. We'll see you in a couple weeks' time.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Mike.
You too, Brian. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Brian Allison is a musicologist, joins us Monday mornings, 11 o'clock for This Week in Music History. Don't forget the Facebook page. These tidbits and so much more every week. This Week in Music History is also the name of the Facebook page. Love those trips down memory lane, looking back on and talking about the music that had such an impact and influence in our lives. And how about that trio? Alanis Morissette, Celine Dion, and Shania Twain. Canadian songstresses dominating the charts in the 1990s. Canadian in the 1990s. All right, it's time to get you an update from the 570 News Center. And then I mentioned it during the Farwell Show 5 today. We're about a month out from the federal budget. We'll talk about that and more with David Drewe, who joins us weekly on Mondays at 11:30 for Drewe's Views. That's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is our good friend, David Drewe, owner, Negotiating Change. If you need help with government relations and stakeholder engagement strategies, David Drewe is your man. He also used to be a man within the ranks of the Conservative Party of Canada, serving as a staffer, and he joins us on Monday mornings at 11:30 for Drewe's Views. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you too.
Let's talk.
I want to come back because, again, I was listening on the way in.
Yes.
And I heard you guys talking about who is going to replace Neil Peart.
Nobody. You can't replace Neil Peart. You can't.
Well, and this is just, if I ask you, who is Kenny Jones? Do you know who I mean?
I do not know who Kenny Jones is.
Most people who, okay, put it this way, I think of Kenny Jones as one of the 3 greatest British rock drummers of all time.
Okay.
You know, there's him, there's Ginger Baker, there's Keith Moon. He played with Rod Stewart early in his career when Rod Stewart rocked in the band called The Faces with Ron Wood. He was an amazing drummer. But then Keith Moon died and he took over drumming for The Who. And he will forever be remembered as the guy who thought he could replace Keith Moon.
Oh, dear.
You know what I mean? Like, who?
Okay, sure.
Like, this is just it. Kenny Jones, amazing drummer. Amazing. Oh, but it's not just how good you are. It's that you're not that guy. And that guy is so much of the thing. You can't replace that guy regardless of talent. It's style and wowzers.
Yeah, I hope fans are forgiving. I'm pretty excited because I still love me some Rush. I get excited when Geddy Lee is at Blue Jays games still. I've been watching Geddy and Alex Lifeson do things on social media, promote beer, all kinds of different things. So I'll take 2/3 of Rush back on stage, but it's going to be weird without Neil.
Yeah, I find it weird they're keeping the name.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. Okay, let's move on to Drewe's Views type business, and I'm going to start out west. We've got an NDP premier in British Columbia, a Conservative premier in Alberta, and a Liberal prime minister with nation-building aspirations. How are we going to make all of this work?
It is so interesting, Mike. I grew up in Sudbury, as many of the listeners now know by now, and I remember growing up there and the NDP wanting to nationalize Inco, wanting to nationalize the mining operations of Falconbridge as well, wanting to nationalize the oil sands because it was too important a resource to be left to the private sector. And now we have the NDP premier of British Columbia saying that the government of Alberta is an illegitimate proponent for a pipeline because they are not private sector. Wow, that is a 180-degree shift. But let's be fair. We also have a free market Conservative premier wanting to put up government money on a pipeline. So we have, you know what I mean? When you look at our NDP premiers, you know, everybody looks at Wab Kinew as the one who seems to be the reasonable one that everybody can get along with. David Eby seems a little bit more strident on some of these things. But on this, he's going full on conservative. And when you look at the conservative premiers across the country, Danielle Smith kind of takes the cake, sometimes in a race with Scott Moe to be the most right wing. But here she is throwing taxpayer dollars to build a pipeline. And this is all because of what Justin Trudeau did to our energy markets on both sides of it. So you've got Mark Carney here, and of course it's a weird place for him to be in and picking sides because all the usual fighters are wearing different colors.
You're throwing something else at the feet of Justin Trudeau? What he did to the energy sector?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, pardon me. I don't think this is something else. I think this is something that he's long been acknowledged as.
Okay, we're just reminding his many fans that listen to this show.
No, but the private market system is our regulations are so broken and obscure that there is no private sector proponent willing to put anything forward because until they see that something is going to work, they're not going to tie up their capital and their credibility just to find out that the major projects office isn't willing to have their back when it comes down to a confrontation with X stakeholder like David Eby or Y stakeholder like a First Nation.
Right.
But the technical group advising Danielle Smith on putting this proposal together, it's all the major pipeline and oil companies and their heads who are sitting down at this. They are invested in buying this from her once she's demonstrated. Like they're trying to, this is private sector involved. But they're she's like, no, this is going to work. And they're like, prove it. And she's like, well, what do I need to do to prove it to you? So now there's this working group and they're putting this proposal forward. And I'm not saying that, I don't like the idea that she's saying she's a proponent for the planning phase. Because to me, you're a proponent all the way through if you're a proponent. If you don't have a proponent all the way through, you don't have a proponent. Having a proponent for the planning phase just means that the major planning office might be picking these fights with David Eby to get permission and might be picking these fights with some First Nations, all to find out that you can't raise the capital to finish it anyway. You need that last dollar committed from the proponent to be a proponent. So I have a lot of room for the people who say this isn't a real thing because they don't have a proponent to the end. But that's not what the NDP are saying. They're saying that government by definition cannot be a proponent, which it's a topsy-turvy world, Mike.
It certainly is, David. Okay, let's stay in that vein. You mentioned Wab Kinew, the NDP Premier of Manitoba, who seems the most reasonable at this point. David Eby, the NDP Premier of British Columbia, a little more strident. The NDP federally is having a leadership race. Isn't that cute? Here. I'm patting the federal NDP on the head right now. Come on.
I can't. I'm sorry. I should have been more prepared. I can't remember the name of the third candidate, the Labour dude.
I can't. I know it's Avi Lewis and McPherson.
Heather McPherson.
And thank you. And then
other guy who's the most interesting to listen to. No, he really. People, when they call in to talk about what they like about me doing these segments, it's generally because they like the way I communicate like a real person rather than this Labour dude. I cannot picture him in the House of Commons doing all the Mr. Speakery sort of pro forma protocol stuff. He doesn't have a position on anything, really. He's going to run, and whether he agrees with it or not, he'll represent the caucus's position, which is, it sounds kind of neat, but it's also, it's a BS answer, Mike. You can't just put it out in that blank slate. Heather McPherson is a sitting member of the caucus. She had Rachel Notley, known for moderate, successful NDP governance, at her announcement. And you have Avi Lewis, who's third generation Lewis, as in Stephen Lewis, David Lewis, the founders of the NDP, ambassador to the UN, greatest orator in Canada. But he's never won an election, and he's the kind of guy he is the guy who led the movement to get rid of Thomas Mulcair for being too centrist. He really wants to take the party to the true left roots. Heather McPherson got in trouble. Oh my God, this was crazy. She said, we can't have this litmus test excluding people. We need to grow. And somehow that became, she supports white supremacy. Yeah, that's the level of debate going on over there. So yeah, there are three really clear choices for the direction of the party, and none of them are trying to out-Carney Mark Carney. Because you remember what they loved about Jagmeet Singh? He was more Trudeau than Trudeau. Trudeau boxed. He did judo. Oh, Trudeau wears $5,000 watches. He wears $10,000 watches and drives a motorcycle. Like, it was just so, GQ. It was so, we've got the more poster boy than they do. This time it looks really like they are trying to figure out what they want as opposed to what the quick solution is. So God bless them.
They're a caucus of 7, David. 7.
Yeah, but honestly, Mike, look what's going on with Canada Post. Are you going to tell me that if election happened tomorrow, they would be 7? I think right now, without any organization at all, they could double their seat count.
Yeah.
Just because the coalition that elected Mark Carney is not quite there anymore. And some of these eggs have been broken. Labor strikes. So I do think they've got a good shot at going up pretty darn quick.
All right. Before we take the break, let's talk about bureaucracy, which you say will grow to meet the needs of bureaucracy. Just what Mark Carney, I'm sure, wants to hear when he's trying to move quickly on nation-building projects.
Well, that's just it. We have so much bureaucracy in Canada that in order to get something done, we had to set up a new bureaucracy to cut through bureaucracy. And I saw you giggle a little bit there.
Well, because it's giggle-worthy.
No, but it is. But also, I am not even saying that as a legitimate criticism of Mark Carney. I am saying that as a criticism of where we are as a country. Because there's no way we could just wholesale rip out all of these regulations that are in the way willy-nilly without having a good understanding of what we need to replace them with that will work expediently. The only thing you can do on short notice on a grand scale is take a look and see what you might be able to do. Whereas this office, hopefully, is not only going to be executing major projects through, but building best practices so that 2 years from now, they could say, yes, and here's all the bloat we found. We can't believe how a pain in the butt it was for us to cut through this unnecessary red tape. And then we find some of those cuts, hopefully. But I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
What do I think? I think Mark Carney is going to find out that the speed of government is far slower than the speed he wishes it to move. It's as simple as that. He's ambitious, but you're going to have to start showing something here, and I don't know if he'll be able to.
And then, honestly, the big other problem with it is it's a major projects office. It's not an important projects office. And there's a whole lot of stuff we need to build Canada that needs to be done, but it's the plant 1,000 trees rather than plant one giant redwood sort of thing. And we don't have anybody cutting through the bureaucracy for these scale-up companies that are doing incredible high-tech work in this area. We don't have support for protecting our food system. We have to look at a million small things, not just the big thing.
Right. David Drewe is a former Conservative Party staffer, currently the owner at Negotiating Change, Government Relations Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Drewe's Views takes a closer look at speed cameras and the upcoming federal budget as we continue this Monday morning on The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Monday mornings at this time mean the time for Drewe's Views with David Drewe, former federal Conservative Party staffer, current owner at Negotiating Change, where you need help with government relations and stakeholder engagement strategies. He is your man. David, you say when it comes to speed cameras in our region, it's not about the numbers. Do you mean the number of speed cameras, the number of people caught speeding and tickets issued?
Tickets issued, revenue, how much of it, where it went, even safety. If they were able to demonstrate, these intersections are safer than they were, even those numbers wouldn't really matter.
So what numbers do matter, or what does matter?
The voter opinion of them. And if somebody decides they don't like something, it doesn't really matter how much you logic them through it. And sometimes it's a pain in the butt for government to accept that the most cost-effective way to do something is not the way government can do it, because you do not rule the people. The people rule you. So it's like, I use the example of the carbon tax. Yes, a properly designed carbon tax is the most efficient and effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, putting a price on carbon. Now, as a side note, when you do that on top of regulations and on top of this thing and the other thing and emissions cuts, et cetera, all of a sudden all the advantages of the carbon tax are gone. But regardless of how efficient it is, people didn't like it. So why spend all your time fighting that battle rather than moving on to find something that, it's not as efficient, and maybe David Drewe is going to end up paying more for something, but it's not going to be in his face, and he's not going to realize it, so it's palatable. Sometimes you've got to do something that is less effective because that will be accepted.
I have heard from proponents of speed cameras the vocal minority being invoked here. It's only the vocal minority that's really upset with speed cameras, don't you know, David? We'll see what voters say in a year's time when we go back to the polls.
I think it's a vocal minority on both sides of it who really, really care. But I do think most of the people in the minority are just like about it. So, but also I've heard a lot of people saying that no, Doug Ford should have just stayed in his lane. And it's like, I don't know if you were one of the ones who said it, Mike, but I'm going to say to all of you, shut up, you idiots, before you embarrass yourselves more. You know what? It wasn't even 7 years ago that Doug Ford gave cities the ability to do this. So it's perfectly within his lane to adjust or change or kill the program. So everybody who says he should just stay in his lane should retake their driver's tests.
I'm begging you, Uncle Doug, don't back down. Go full Tom Petty on this. Don't back down. All right. Before we let you go today, David, we would be remiss if we didn't address the elephant in the room. And it has to be an elephant because this budget is big and scary, and it's coming out in about a month's time.
And they're permanently going to be coming out in the fall from now on. And apparently most of our G7 peer countries are already doing it this way, and it makes sense for the building season, and it makes sense for a lot of other corporations' tax years. It makes you think that they've been planning not to have a budget for 2 years all along. It was the smartest thing in the world to get to the point where we had to release a full budget because we hadn't done one since, how many prime ministers back? But yes, I am very afraid of this. And again, I am not blaming Mark Carney. And in this case, I am kind of blaming Justin Trudeau because we do not have a strong enough fiscal position, but that's what Mark Carney inherited, not what he is. It's a problem he's trying to solve. But, oh my gosh, we have, on top of the need to cut everything, which, we've had drastic cuts before, and that by itself is not easy, but you're doing this in the era of the unpredictability of the tariffs, the unpredictability of our future relations with the U.S. in general. Like, we are hoping that, what are we doing? We're more than doubling our defense spending. We're hoping that's going to be enough. Like, nobody has ever said that's the end point. And let's put it this way. What if our relationships with Trump get a little bit worse?
How could they possibly get worse?
Well, I call them chilly right now.
Fair.
But what if all of a sudden he decides he's going to pressure point and so they're going to search every car crossing the border? What if there's a million things he can do that we can't predict for that, any one of, and you're budgeting for that situation too, on top of all the cuts you're trying to make, on top of building for the future, on top of, it's going to be a scary number.
It's going to be a very scary number.
It's going to be a very scary number. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again now. I am so afraid because I do not believe they are going to be able to get a number that I am at all comfortable with as we talk about this. My stomach gets a little bit queasy because these numbers are very, very scary to me as somebody who loves children and wants them to have a Canada later. But I also don't understand how me, fiscal conservative Dave, but also human being Dave would be able to cut enough to get to a number that I would be happy with as fiscal conservative Dave.
I could cut the number, but human being Farwell would get in the way. I could make the number work.
No, that's just
fiscally.
exactly it. It's really easy here for me to sit there and go, Mark Carney, you haven't gone far enough. And then he could just hand me and go, what are you cutting?
Yeah.
And I go, this. And he goes, oh, you know what that means? Oh, geez, I guess it's harder than I thought. I really don't, there's no way he's going to make me happy with this budget. And I feel sorry for him because there's no way he can. So I'm already positioning in my mind to go, I'm grading him on a curve. I'm going to have to grade him on a curve on this. And that's a bit scary because generally you don't do that. And when it's a one-person curve, you never know.
Former Conservative Party staffer feels sorry for Liberal Prime Minister. Story at 11. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Have a great week.
You too. David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, and he joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 to share his views with us on Drew's Views. You can share your views with us in the next 60 minutes. Rant or Rave begins right after this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
You'll have to forgive my distraction the past 60 minutes or so since I learned, and it's funny because I only recently started following Geddy Lee on Instagram. I don't know how I came across him, but I was glad that I did because, well, Geddy Lee is just so happens to be the frontman of the greatest rock and roll band in the history of rock and roll music. And so just before 11 o'clock this morning, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, the two surviving members of the rock band Rush, announced that they are launching a North American tour. It's coming to Toronto this August. It's coming to Cleveland next September. I signed up for the pre-sale for all three of those shows. Anyway, I've been a little bit distracted. Thanks for all of the messages about it, and thanks to the newsroom and Geddy Lee himself for alerting me to the upcoming tour. I'm so forgive the distraction. Lots of things that we can talk about today, including the Premier's 2-year-old promise. That's right, almost 2 years old. It'll be 2 years old in December when he came to Kitchener to Ford Fest at Bingaman's and said, as sure as I'm standing here, you will have a 1,600 square foot house with a basement, paved driveway, backyard with fence for under $500,000. In the 2 years since then, detached homes in Waterloo Region have made up about 10% of all housing starts. Because you know what we do around here? We build condos, and we build lots and lots of condos. So welcome to Waterloo Region. Have we got a condo for you? Animals being used in testing for medical advances. Take your pick. It is a Monday rant or rave edition of the Talkback Hour, and we'll start the day with Ian. Good afternoon, Ian.
Mike, you know this is a major rave. Can you and I just fanboy for the next hour on the radio and play Rush songs?
I mean, I would like to do that very much, yes.
Oh, my God. This is seriously the most unexpected thing ever. But I got to let you in on a little insight with this whole tour. I'm lucky in that I actually have gotten to know some of Rush's crew, including Neil's drum tech, Lauren. And I messaged him maybe 2 weeks ago because he had messaged me about a particular thing with a comment that I made in regards to Neil's drum kit. And I said, hey, Lauren, how's retirement life going for you? And he goes, oh, it's great. I'm working with this German drummer, female drummer. I'm like, oh, might that be Anika Niles? Because that's the only German drummer I could think of. Not thinking oh, my God, this is the drummer that will be playing for Neil for Rush. And you know what? This is awesome for girl power. and for the women to see an incredible drummer and someone who definitely can play the parts for Neil. In fact, Moving Pictures tribute out of Scotland is a female drummer, Jamie. She's incredible. But you know what? This is with all the crap in the world that's going on, this is probably the best news that I think I could have ever, got this morning. And I'm sorry, I'm fanboy now. And Mike, I'm so happy you got some gonna get some tickets as well, because the last tour was incredible. This next one's going to be even better, I think.
I look forward to it. I mean, I don't have the tickets yet, but I have signed up for the pre-sale. To my darling beloved, I signed up for the pre-sale for 3 of the shows. Come on. By the way, you want to get excited about that. I ran into a colleague in the hallway during that last break, and he said, "Are you excited about the Blue Jays?" Everybody's on that bandwagon. I would like to remind you, I've been on that bandwagon since like July, and I have the receipts, as they say, to prove it. So we can talk some Blue Jays baseball, and specifically Vlad Guerrero Jr., if you want, during this Talkback Hour. Rant or rave to Jersey Bill. Good afternoon, Billy.
Which is exactly where I want to start.
Attaboy.
So, I thought, because Guerrero did not have a bad year, but he had like a kind of more of a journeyman kind of successful year. He was batting around 300, but he only had the 23 home runs. And I realized people were starting to say, why did we pay him $500 million? But, the playoffs are essentially like a second season. I said, I bet you he's going to come to life in the second season, and wouldn't you know he did.
Did he ever? 6 for 9, 6 RBIs, 2 home runs, including a grand slam. Come on with your coming on.
He's showing he's worth that $500 million, and I keep thinking, especially, I have to say, this is my rave about the Kitchener Ranger broadcast. I had both the TV and the radio on. So TV guy, I remember that, especially in the first goal that Kitchener got the other night. Then the TV guy was halfway excited, but about a minute later, when it came over the radio, because I was listening to it over my phone, so it was a bit more of a delay. I mean, you were really just so animated, your voice really brings people right into it if they're not watching on the screen. And so as I said before, I certainly think Rogers should consider giving you that 1% Vladimir Guerrero solution when contract talks come up. I think you're worth $5 million for the next 14 years.
Billy, you're a good man. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I like what you said. I really do, because this is what it's all about. If we can bring even an ounce of that energy from in the building to bring you into it with us when you can't be there, that is absolutely what we are trying to do. So thank you for those very kind words. And thank you for listening to our Kitchener Rangers coverage this Wednesday night in Flint, Michigan, Friday night in Sault Ste. Marie. Can't wait to see you, Sue. And then Saginaw on Saturday to close out our road trip coming up. No better time than when we're on the road to tune into the radio broadcast as well. You just turn down the volume on the TV, sync up your phone or your smart speaker with the radio broadcast, and you are off to the races. And you get the kind of local coverage with the pictures from somebody from the visiting rink. It's a decent way to do it. Just on Billy's note about baseball, because we call him Jersey Bill since he hails from New Jersey. And when we were at the game on Saturday, I just want to shout out the 3 Yankees fans that were sitting right in front of us and were really good-natured. I wish I could have talked to them a little bit more, especially at the end, because, again, these guys were great. They were big baseball fans, but they weren't obnoxious in any way, even though they were wearing their team's colors at the Rogers Center. Good for you. Do that. And yes, me being me, I gave them a bit of a hard time, because why wouldn't I? I'm like, hey, what are you doing in here with those clothes on? But they were great guys, clearly passionate baseball fans. Their team took it on the chin. They took it just fine. And you know what, guys? Thanks for coming to Canada. Thanks for coming to Toronto, spending some of your money here, despite all the nonsense going on in our governments. We just want to watch baseball, and we want to watch our favorite team. And your favorite team was the Yankees, and you came to Toronto to do that, and you spent some of your hard-earned money in our country. I think that's pretty cool. George, you are on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Yes, Mike, I'd like to rant, please.
Sure.
why on God's green earth are certain teams we are playing the OHL 8 times a year? I've had it. I don't want to see Owen Sound 8 times. I don't want to see London 8 times. Mike, is there any way we can, you know the guy who runs the OHL, we can change that a little bit? Even 6 would be a much better way to do it.
George, I do know Brian Crawford, the commissioner of the OHL. I have shared with him my ideas for a rebalanced schedule. So far, nothing has changed. But I remain optimistic. I think Brian Crawford's on the cutting edge of things. He wants to. I think his first order of business is expansion. But anyway, I promise I will continue lobbying for change. Okay, because you're right. 8 times is too many. We play London 6 times. We play Erie 6 times. We play Owen Sound 8 times. We play Guelph 8 times. 8 times is too many times in a 68-game season. It really is. I think there's a way we could play no team more than 4 times, but that's just my way of looking at it because it does get a little bit tiresome after a while. Appreciate the rant, George. I'll keep working on it, I promise. Grant, good afternoon. Rant or rave?
I guess a rant or whatever you want to call it. That Derek Colo hit, was that a head check to the head? And that other hit was, I think it was Cameron Reed, right?
Yes. You give me so much information to go on, Grant. Cameron Reed was checked from behind towards the end of the first period on Friday night by Harry Nancy of the Owen Sound Attack. I thought it was an unnecessary hit by Nancy for sure. Rangers head coach UC Ahokas called it a cheap shot after the game. I don't disagree. Just because of where it happened, the timing of it, like it just didn't need to happen. And that's the sort of thing I think we need to send a pretty strong reminder to the players about, that they don't need to engage in play like that. So... he only got 2 minutes for it. The referees looked at it. I don't remember the Diracolo hit that you're talking about. Sorry.
Yeah, it looked like it was slightly off the opponent head, and the Romano hit. Yeah, I think it should have been
the Reed one. You mean?
No, sorry.
Yeah,
the Reed one should have been 5-minute penalty. And then a game misconduct.
I agree with that. I think it should have been. The referees looked at it. They made their decision on the ice. And I'm sorry I don't remember as well as I should from Friday. I was saying to my colleagues this morning, my coworkers, when I came in, it felt like I had a whole weekend off. Like I barely remember Friday night and the hockey game. I remember the Rangers won 4-3. It was a pretty physical game. But then there were 2 days. We went to the Jays game on Saturday. We had friends over for a barbecue on Sunday. It was an early OHL season weekend off. We'll pay the piper when we go on the road this week. Rant or Rave continues. Phone lines are open to you on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. My beloved says she signed up for the Rush pre-sale too. I guess we're both going to see Getty and Alex together. I think she's going to send me by myself, but nonetheless, I love it. We're all set for the Rush 50-something tour. I'm also all set to hear your rants and or raves on the show this Monday afternoon. You know the numbers. You make the call. We'll answer. Conservative Charlie, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. You have to bear with me just for a minute on this. I lost my glasses the other day, so I was watching the ball game, but my face is right in front of the screen. And they scanned over the audience, and they showed Geddy Lee there.
Oh, they sure did.
Now, like I say, my sight's not that bad, but I'm sure he had a pin on his head that said, "I like Mike." But, I looked at the guy beside him, and this guy appeared to be about 5'7.5", good-looking guy. He was wearing a Kitchener Ranger hat, an Austin Matthews Leaf jersey, and he was holding a miniature Stanley Cup in one hand and a dozen butter tarts in the other hand. Mike, was that you there?
Charlie, how did you know? How did you figure that out?
Oh, you know what? I'm glad my sight's okay. Now, my second thing is I'm going to go down Iron Needles on 2 wheels without my glasses, Mike, now that my sight's okay, buddy.
I'm glad to hear it. I'll be sure I'm off Iron Needles when you get here. Thanks, Charlie. Here's the thing about Geddy Lee being at Blue Jays games. So you'll remember before the renovations at Rogers Center, you could pretty much clearly see Geddy in his seat behind the home plate. Now that the renos have happened, you don't see him as often. I know he was there on Saturday. He did show up on TV screens, and my beloved picked him out too. I totally missed him. Here's what a geek I am, though. We are super lucky when it comes to Blue Jays access, and we have friends who have really good seats that include a parking spot right at the Rogers Center. So we drive down, park underground, and then at the end of the game, you're leading the traffic out of Toronto, which is just amazing. And the one time when we went to the game with these friends and parked underground, and we were walking to get to the elevator to go upstairs, we passed Geddy Lee's parking spot because his name is on it. And it was empty at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to stay here. I'm just going to wait for Geddy's car to show up. Do you think that would be creepy in any way? Anyway, I still haven't seen him at the game. I had the chance, I was going to say 100, as I usually do, but I think it was roughly 25 years ago, maybe a little more than now. Yeah. When Rush got their recognition on Canada's Walk of Fame. And there was a gala reception at the Royal York in downtown Toronto. I was working for a radio station in Toronto at the time, and I was sent to cover that gala, and I got to do an interview with Geddy Lee. I would love to do another one. I would like to see him in person and shake his hand and talk to him about all kinds of things, because I feel like I can bring more to the interview now. Maybe there's an opportunity to do that in the days ahead, but that's how much of a geek I am for this guy. I just find his talent so exceptional. I am in awe of it. I really am. He and Alex and Neil together, just what beautiful sounds they have made for us as musicians. I'll get off that soapbox now. Paul, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
I'm back.
Oh, why did you come back? You should have stayed in the Bushman.
Yeah, it was so nice up there. But, I left yesterday, Sunday afternoon, to head back home.
Okay.
I was up around Dorset. For those who don't know, it's between about halfway between Huntsville and Minden. To come back, I come across 117, and I get onto Highway 11, right around Bracebridge. Now, when I got onto Highway 11, the traffic was actually pretty heavy. Google said it was going to take me 4 hours to get home, and that it was going to arrive at 7:30 in the evening. So I sat there in the left or right-hand lane, driving along. I never changed lanes from where I got on at Bracebridge all the ways down to Barrie. I made one lane change in Barrie just because of some construction. Barrie's been under construction for the last 10 years.
Fair.
Okay. The next lane change that I made was in Vaughan. And, of course, when you get into Toronto, you got no choice but to make a lot of lane changes because of the way the highways are. But I stayed in that lane all the ways, basically from when I got on Highway 11 down through the 400, right down to the to Vaughan, without changing lanes, and I arrived just a few minutes later than Google originally said it was going to arrive. But then, of course, there were some accidents and whatnot on the way.
Okay, Paul.
Now,
so as I always have to ask you, what's your point?
Changing lanes back and forth, back and forth. They passed me, I passed them again without ever changing lanes. People, stay in your own lane. You'll get there.
All right, Paul. Thank you for the story. I had a feeling that's where the story was going to end, but it's so colorful, isn't it? It's like taking a little trip down through the forest, a little trip through the tulips, a little walk through the woods with Paul, and eventually we get around to the point. Now, I will take Paul at his word that he passed again people that had passed him, but I was going to say, Paul, there's no saying for certain. I mean, even though you got home just a couple minutes after the Google told you that you were going to get home, you don't know where those other people were going and if you got to where you were going faster. But I don't want to take away from the point because I think Paul makes a good point. If we just got onto the highway and drove at a reasonable highway speed and stopped with the back and the forth from one lane to the other lane because we think we're going to save a precious few seconds along the way, what a wonderful driving world it would be. So maybe, and believe it or not, I am about to advocate for this, okay? And if you've listened to this show for any length of time, it will probably surprise you that I'm about to advocate for this. But could we take Paul's advice? Would you be willing to do that? Let's all take Paul's advice the next time we get on the highway, whether it's 7885, the Conestoga Expressway through Waterloo Region, or the 401 from here to Toronto, or the 401 from here to London, whatever it is. You get on the highway, you get in your lane, and you stay there until you need to move so traffic can merge on, or until you need to exit. All of this back and forth with the lanes. You're just bogging things down, and you're not saving the time that you think you're saving. A well-placed, I think that was a rave for staying in your lane from Paul. As we continue rant or rave, it's our Monday Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Sorry, what's that, Hutch? Did you say that there are more organizations trying to save face on the poor implementation of a good idea? Is that what you said? You see, yes, the Premier granted power to municipalities to implement speed camera technology. But then our municipalities got drunk on the idea of how much revenue they could generate, and they completely gummed up the speed camera rollout. They've got no voter support in it, and now they're trying to not only save face, but save the money it's going to cost to cancel the program prematurely. This is why we can't have nice things. That's just my 2 cents on it. Back to the phones here on Rant or Rave. Nelson is next. Good afternoon, Nelson.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
I just wanted to comment yesterday on, it was a great day, and the Jays are on. It was Sunday, football's on. A lot of things to watch on the tube, and unfortunately, we lost all our Rogers service in Cambridge, and they said it was due to some wire being cut, or the fiber went down. It was something that was totally beyond their control. Does anybody ever look into that and say exactly what was the vandalism that caused this?
That's an excellent question. I'm sorry to hear that was what you had to endure. Next time, hey, come on up to Kitchener. Water's clean and the cable was working. But I don't know how deep the investigations go to get to the bottom of these things and what it ultimately turned out to be. Vandalism, misadventure, collisions on the road. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But I also am sorry that you had to live without such a great day of sports on your telly. Just don't forget, ever. We do carry the Blue Jays games right here on 570 News Radio. And quite frankly, there ain't nothing like baseball on the radio, at least as far as I'm concerned. Preston Paul, Farwell's Force member number 45. Good afternoon.
How's it going again, Mike?
Good, buddy.
Good. You had a heck of a game on Saturday there going. That must have been unbelievable.
Oh, my gosh. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was so close for a while, right? Until we blew it open late.
Yeah. I was a little nervous, but sitting outside in this summer weather.
Oh, yeah.
Is just unbelievable. And another rave, I go back and forth when you're in commercial. I'll go do a quick CP24, and I saw that Rush thing. Then I fell off the couch when I saw that.
You and me both, buddy.
Yeah, but I had still got that recording of the 2011 Time Machine. So anytime you and your beloved are in Preston area and you got an hour and 10 minutes, Mike, I'm telling you, you should see this concert that they put on. It is unbelievable. You would really enjoy it being a Rush fan.
You know what? I saw that tour, so I would, that'd be really interesting to see now the video that you have of it, to see how many things I remember.
Yeah, and it's so clear, and it's just, you see the old footage from other bands, and it's real crappy now, but this from 2011, it is just spectacular. They sound great. I love Rush. I'm telling you, they're just unbelievable.
You and me both. All right, buddy. Thanks for that.
You're welcome, Mike.
Appreciate it. Good to hear from you today. Just going back to what Paul was saying and the game on Saturday, which was 2-1 into the 6th inning, right? And then the Blue Jays blew it open late. But you'll remember the Jays had 2 really good catches in the outfield. Nathan Lucas out in right field with one of them, and Dalton Varsho in center field with another. And it was after the Varsho catch that those Yankees fans sitting in front of us turned around and said, boy, you guys play good defense. And so, again, just take some Yankees fans, take some Blue Jays fans, put them in the same place to watch a game, and nothing bad has to come of it. Take some Americans, take some Canadians, put them in the same place to watch the game. Nothing bad has to come of it. Good day at the ballpark. Terry, you are on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Those 2 Prestonite Pauls couldn't be any more different, eh?
That's a very good observation. They are decidedly different people, yes.
Yeah, the one loves sports, the other one not so much. Let's just put it at that. Hey, Mike, did you leave like 3 a.m. on Saturday morning to get to the game by 4?
No, we actually did really well. Got there in about 2 hours. We left at 12:30 and we were in the park just a little after 2:30.
Yeah, that's quite the adventure in itself, man. Give yourself a pat on the back for sacrificing that. But anyway, Mike, this morning you had George called in. He said that he was talking about that Doug Ford thing about the $5,000 home.
$500,000 home. Yeah.
1,600. And he said he must have been smoking something. Well, let me just put it to you this way, Mike. I think Rolling Stone magazine must be smoking something. I mean, I get it. The Hat song is not all that great, you know, The Man Without Hats. But where was Don't Worry, Be Happy and Red, Red Wine? Those are brutal songs from the 80s. I think they should keep those 2. I thought that was going to be like the top 2, Mike, for sure.
That's funny.
Oh, my God. How did those songs not make that list?
You know, it's funny you bring up Red, Red Wine because for the longest time, Terry, I couldn't even listen to it. I'd turn it right away if I heard it. But I've warmed up to it over the years. I really have.
Well, you're a better man than I am because even on a chilly day, I could warm up to that song. I'm telling you, man. It's and Don't Worry, Be Happy is not any better. But anyway, I thought that was a weird list. But a couple of those songs definitely are bad. But the other 3, I don't know. It wasn't so bad. Like the one by Europe, that's not such a bad song. It's actually a good song to get you up and going. Like a lot of sports teams use that as their kind of fight song. But anyway. Okay, Mike, have yourself a good day. We'll catch you again.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. If you missed the beginning of the show today, you missed quite a bit, including what Rolling Stone magazine said were the 5 worst songs of the 1980s, like the entire decade, the 5 worst songs. So I'll tell you what, because I don't want you to be left in the dark, and Terry dropped a couple of hints there. Europe, Hats, Bobby McFerrin, nor UB40 with Red Red Wine were on the list, but there were 5 bands that were. Again, Terry gave you a couple of hints there. So I'll get to that list in a second. But the other point, on a more serious note, we were talking about through the morning news today, the relocation of Herb and Good Funeral Home from King Street South near Uptown Waterloo to Victoria Street in Kitchener. And when that relocation happens, the existing Herb and Good is going to be turned into, you guessed it, a couple of tall 30-plus story condominium towers. The home, the older home right next door, the Kuntz home, which is near what used to be the Kuntz Brewery there at King and William Street. It became Labatt Brewery over time, but the Kuntz home is still there. Beautiful older century home in Waterloo. There is some talk about maybe turning that into a restaurant of some sort. But the Urban Good Funeral Home, and you can imagine it's a pretty big footprint there. So 2 condominium towers go up. And it just got me thinking again of up, up, up. And I get it, right? Density, intensification. These words get thrown around all the time. We need to build up. We can't build out. No more sprawl. Let's intensify in areas where we are able. But it seems to me, and I was kind of joking about this not too long ago, that everything we build now is a condominium. So yeah, we're going to grow to 1 million people. That means 300,000 more people in the next 25 years are going to come to Waterloo Region and call it home. And boy, have we got a condo for you. But a house with a yard where you can let the dog run around and all that, and people next door in their houses, that's just not happening. And the numbers, I was kind of riffing on this in a somewhat lighthearted way, but if I'm being honest, and I'm a guy of a certain age, so I get it. I grew up in a city where we were sprawling, and it was all single-family detached homes, and so that's what I've grown accustomed to. The change is difficult. It's jarring in some places. I've told you about my feelings in downtown Kitchener sometimes, where I feel rather claustrophobic with all those big, tall buildings. So it wasn't too long ago I was just kind of riffing on all of it, and, you know, a condo for you and a condo for that. It's like the Oprahification of our community. But the numbers actually bear this out. If you look at detached homes built in Waterloo region over the past couple of years, they represent only 10% of all housing starts. So 90% of the housing starts in this region over the past 2 years are not detached homes. Only 813 total detached homes. And last year, 2024, we only started 376 detached homes across the region of Waterloo. And that's the fewest since 1990. The next lowest year was 91, where we started 669. So almost twice as many as last year's 376 detached homes. But it's a very small percentage of the kind of home that we are building in this region these days. And we got to talking about that because I reminded you of almost 2 years ago. It was December of 2023. Ontario Premier Doug Ford in Kitchener at Binghamton's. It was Ford Fest, and Premier Ford promised you this.
I got to ask you folks, to some of you, not the younger ones, but old guys like myself, you ever went by those wartime homes that they built years ago? We have them in Etobicoke. Now they're about 1.2 billion. Let me give you a promise. We're going to make sure that we're going to donate land. We're going to work with our municipalities. We're going to offer a 1,600 square foot home with a basement that's finished that you can rent out or have a family there. We're going to have a backyard with a fence. You're going to have a paved driveway under $500,000. You can't find a home under $500,000 anywhere in this province. As sure as I'm standing here, we're going to make that available to young people, people that are renting right now that have a dream of home ownership.
I'm going to make you a promise. As sure as I'm standing here, a 1,600 square foot home with a finished basement that you can rent out or have family, paved driveway, backyard with a fence for under $500,000. Ontario Premier Doug Ford made that promise at Ford Fest in Kitchener 2 years ago. And what have we done since then? 813 detached homes. Region-wide, 813. And not a single one of them less than $500,000. Okay, just putting that out there for you. We'll get to those 5 worst songs of the 1980s and more of your calls as we continue on Rant or Rave this afternoon. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every day between noon and 1, we open the phone lines for the Talkback Hour, which gives you the chance to start the conversation. It can be a reflection on something we talked about during the show today or something else entirely, because if it's important to you, it's important to us. Maybe we can learn something and investigate further whatever it is that's going on in your part of the world. On Mondays, in keeping with long-standing tradition on this radio station, we make the Talkback Hour your Rant or Rave Hour. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you're feeling pretty good. You want to sing someone's or something's praises. That's what a rave is all about. But talk back every day from noon until 1. And for the rest of this week, you're going to be talking back with our good friend Larry Fedoruk, who will be filling in for me as I head on the road with the Kitchener Rangers. Let's get back to the phones. More rants or raves this afternoon. Tom, good afternoon.
How you doing, Mikey?
Good, thank you. How are you?
There's another Leaf season coming up, and they traded the best guy we ever had.
No, they didn't. Austin Matthews is the best guy we ever had.
Let me ask you.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see how many he's going to do it, because half the goals were set up by, and it was beautiful to watch.
I don't care. No, it's fine. Austin Matthews is great. Don't worry about it.
Now, the thing, why did they blame it all on Marner? He didn't do anything. It was these
Exactly.
idiots
No,
at the
you
top.
should have stopped that. He didn't do anything. That's why they blamed it on him. He disappeared in the playoffs.
Well, so did the whole team. Like
Oh, okay.
last night with the Wings, when I saw 2 minutes, they couldn't get out of there.
You're right. You're right.
And then they lead 5-2, and they lose in overtime. I don't know.
I guess we'll see.
I hope it's going to be a good season, but I'm not holding my breath.
You know what, Tom? You sound like a Leafs fan. And I'm with you. I'm not either. And I am going to miss. I'm just making fun of Mitch Marner. Look, he and Matthews were pretty fun to watch together, weren't they? So we shall see. A new season begins on Wednesday, which, by the way, you know what that means, right? We're going to be bringing back some AM on AM in the AM. AM for Austin Matthews on AM radio in the AM, the morning part of the day. So don't you worry. When Austin Matthews scores, you'll get some AM on AM in the AM here on the show. Rudy, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Yes, good day, Mike. I read an article this morning about the cars that are supplied to the MPPs under Doug Ford, about full radar tickets that they're getting.
Yeah, a whole bunch of Ford's staffers have been getting dinged by speed cameras.
Doing like 70 clicks over 40. Their average speed from the camera is 17 clicks over the speed. Who's paying for those tickets? That's not much of a question because we know it's us. Maybe he should have a talk with them. He wouldn't Doug wouldn't say who they are, but sometimes it might be a staffer driving the car, but still, we're paying the tickets, and that's my rant for today.
All right, Rudy, appreciate the rant. You're right. I mean, I would like to think you don't get to expense that. The driver of the vehicle should be the one who pays the fine, but I guess if the vehicle is owned by the government's ministry or office, that office would pay for the ticket. But yes, I saw the same story about the number of government staffers who have been dinged by photo radar. I will say, even at 17 over, if the speed limit was an arbitrary 30, I still don't believe the person driving 47 is the speeder that you're looking for. You talk about the fellow in New Dundee that was doing a $173. That's the speeder that you're looking for. But I digress. Terry called earlier and made reference to a little list we started the show with today about the 5 worst songs of the entire decade of the 1980s. And Terry wondered why Red, Red Wine and Don't Worry, Be Happy weren't on the list. If you missed it at the beginning of the show today, according to Rolling Stone magazine, which on this day, October the 6th, back in 2011, released the list, these were the 5 worst songs of the 1980s, starting with Men Without Hats.
We can dance, everybody look at your hands. We can dance, everybody's taking the chance. Safe to dance, oh, it's safe to dance.
I mean, the safety dance wasn't like one of the worst of the 1980s. Well, that's what Rolling Stone magazine said. The 5th worst, in fact. 4th worst song of the 80s, according to Rolling Stone magazine.
Wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo. Wake me up before you go.
I was never a huge fan of Wham, but when you hear that, don't you just think 1980s? That's what I call bubblegum pop, to me anyway, according to Rolling Stone magazine. Wake Me Up Before You Go, the 4th worst song of the 1980s. The 3rd worst, I used to like this one.
Lady in red is dancing with me.
I think Chris de Burgh only had one more hit. I can't remember. But anyway, that was the 3rd worst song of the 80s, according to Rolling Stone magazine. When Terry called earlier, he made reference to this one, Europe.
It's the final countdown.
I can understand it at a sporting event or The Farwell Show 5 that we do at the beginning of the show, right? I like to throw some final countdown in there. And the worst song of the entire decade of the 1980s, according to Rolling Stone magazine, was the song we started the show with today.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city.
Are you kidding me? Starship, and we built the worst song of the 1980s. I loved that song. We played it to start the show today. I liked it so gosh darn much. But Rolling Stone magazine said those were the 5 worst songs of the 1980s. We Built This City by Starship, The Final Countdown by Europe, Lady in Red by Chris de Burgh, Wake Me Up Before You Go by Wham, and Safety Dance by Men Without Hats. And now you can discuss it with your friends later today. I got to fly just like that. We are out of time for another day. Now you know with Rob Snow is coming up this afternoon until All News Afternoons at 3 with Aaron Anderson and Paul McPhee. Larry Fedoruk will be with you for the rest of the week. I invite you to join Josh Piercy and I on the road with the Rangers starting Wednesday night in Flint. Look forward to talking to you then. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.